asked. Here, in the vast ancient silence, you are small and unready, but you will learn. You will survive. You've stepped far back, much farther than castles or empires, into the Pleistocene, a world carved by ice and silence. No roads, no machines, no comforts, just frost-dusted grass beneath bare feet and a chill that bites deeper than any winter you know. Around you, glaciers groan, massive beasts trumpet, and the wild waits patiently, indifferent to your presence. You don't belong here yet. Your hands are soft, your eyes unsure. You can't build fire, find food, or read the land's whispered warnings. Nearby, early humans wrapped in hides watch quietly. They neither welcome nor reject you. They simply exist beyond your reach. Survival here is a daily dance with hunger, cold, and danger. The giant mammoths, lurking predators, and unforgiving weather show no mercy. Food isn't on a shelf, it's a chase, a dig, a gamble against fate. Water may poison you. Shelter's a gamble against creatures and cold alike. Yet these fragile humans endure. They listen to the earth, learn its secret language of tracks and plants, and share stories by firelight. They belong to this relentless world because they belong to each other. You shiver as night falls, alone beneath a sky thick with stars no city can match. The cold presses in, and fear settles quietly in your bones. Not panic, just the solemn weight of being new to this place. Prehistoric illnesses you can't pronounce and can't cure. A gentle slide into a world without medicine, bed sheets, or ginger tea. Life in the prehistoric world was a relentless, uncompromising struggle for survival, and nowhere was this more brutally evident than in the realm of sickness and disease. The Paleolithic humans, our ancient ancestors who roamed the earth tens of thousands of years ago, lived without the comforts, knowledge, or technology we take for granted today. There were no sterile hospitals, no soothing medicines, no gentle caregivers wielding ginger tea or soft blankets to ease the suffering of the ill. Instead, sickness was a shadow that could strike unexpectedly, a mysterious force that seemed as much a part of the harsh wilderness as the biting cold or prowling predators. The diseases they faced were often invisible enemies, creeping through the tribe with devastating effect, leaving pain, confusion, and death in their wake. Infectious diseases, those caused by bacteria, viruses, and parasites, were a constant threat. Though we might imagine prehistoric people living in small, isolated bands shielded from widespread contagion, the reality was more complicated. Nomadic lifestyles and close contact with wild animals introduced zoonotic diseases, illnesses jumping from animal to human long before the dawn of agriculture. Parasites like lice, ticks, and intestinal worms likely plagued these early humans relentlessly, feeding on their blood, stealing nutrients, and spreading infections. The itching, scratching, and discomfort would have been a near constant irritation, a maddening distraction from the daily struggle for food and shelter. Tuberculosis, a disease still common in many parts of the world today, almost certainly afflicted Paleolithic peoples. The bacteria that cause it thrive in crowded, enclosed spaces, which might seem unlikely for nomads living outdoors or in open caves. But the close-knit living conditions around fires and within shelters provided enough opportunity for transmission. The coughs, fevers, and weight loss associated with tuberculosis would have been terrifyingly familiar, yet without any understanding of germs or treatments, those infected were left to wither away, their suffering often hidden away in the shadows of the tribe. Leprosy, another ancient disease, probably existed even then, manifesting as disfiguring sores and numbness. Those afflicted may have faced social isolation or rejection, as the tribe's survival depended on physical strength and cooperation. Without antibiotics or hygiene knowledge, the disease's slow progress would have marked individuals as outcasts, compounding the physical agony with profound loneliness. It is hard to imagine the psychological toll of such illness in a world where survival was a daily battle, and weakness could mean death, not only for oneself, but for one's entire family or clan. In addition to infectious diseases, injuries from daily life were a frequent source of pain and disability. Stone tools and weapons, while revolutionary for survival, were crude and often dangerous in their own right. Cuts and puncture wounds inflicted during hunting or tool making easily became infected. With no antiseptics or sutures, even a minor wound risked festering into life-threatening conditions like gangrene. Broken bones, Dislocations or head injuries from falls, animal attacks, or tribal conflicts were treated as best as possible with natural splints or immobilization, but many resulted in permanent disability or death. The common cold and influenza, transmitted through the air and by touch, would have swept through groups like invisible storms, causing coughing, sneezing, fever, and exhaustion. The concept of quarantine was unknown, so the sick were cared for only as long as the tribe's resources allowed, and sometimes not at all. The fevered bodies of the ill lay close to others, helping spread the viruses, which thrived on the warmth of human gatherings. The cycle of infection and recovery shaped the dynamics of these early societies as surely as the hunt or the seasons. Compounding these woes were nutritional deficiencies caused by food scarcity or imbalanced diets. Periods of famine, harsh winters, or failed hunts meant that even the strongest warriors could weaken and fall ill. Scurvy, caused by a lack of vitamin C, may have led to swollen gums, bleeding, and eventual death, while a deficiency in vitamin D, necessary for healthy bones, could cause rickets, leaving children with bowed legs and lifelong deformities. The Paleolithic diet, largely composed of meat, tubers, nuts, and wild plants, varied by region and season, but was hardly guaranteed to meet all nutritional needs. This dietary fragility added an invisible layer of vulnerability to already precarious lives. Prehistoric humans had no concept of microbes or viruses. The causes of illness were attributed to mystical forces or displeased spirits, and treatment was often spiritual or ritualistic rather than medical. Shamans or medicine people, recognizable by their elaborate body paint and feathered adornments, took on the role of healer. Their methods included chanting, drumming, and elaborate dances intended to drive out the evil spirits believed to cause sickness. They might apply poultices made from crushed herbs, mud, or animal fats, hoping to soothe pain or reduce swelling, but these remedies were hit or miss at best. Sometimes the application of a bitter root or bitter-smelling resin would bring temporary relief, or at least the comforting illusion of care, but the underlying infections and diseases generally ran their course unchecked. The absence of beds or soft places to rest compounded suffering. When sick, the Paleolithic human might lie on cold, uneven ground or rough animal skins, exposed to wind, rain, and insects. There was no soft pillow or warm blanket, only the harsh embrace of the wilderness. Sleep, when it came, was restless and fitful, haunted by fevers and chills. The constant discomfort weakened the body's ability to fight infection, making recovery more difficult. Care by others was limited by necessity, when every member of the tribe had to contribute to gathering food or watching for predators. Tending to the ill was a luxury few could afford for long. Yet amidst this bleak reality, resilience was born. The shared experience of illness and injury strengthened social bonds. The tribe learned to care for their own, to carry the wounded back from the hunt, to share scarce food with the weak, and to protect the sick from further harm. This rudimentary compassion laid the groundwork for future advances in medicine and community care. Even without understanding the mechanisms of disease, early humans developed an acute awareness of symptoms and patterns. They recognized that certain herbs could relieve pain or fever, that wounds healed faster when kept clean, or that some illnesses were contagious and required separation when possible. The tragic loss of tribe members to disease was also woven into their cultural memory through the fireside stories. Tales of those taken too soon were told and retold, becoming both a mourning and a warning. The rituals surrounding death, careful placement of bodies in shallow graves, the inclusion of tools or food for the afterlife, expressed both reverence and a desperate hope for protection against future illness. These early funerary customs reveal an emerging understanding of mortality and a longing for continuity beyond the physical world. In summary, the prehistoric experience of illness was a harsh, often terrifying chapter in human history. It was a world without cures, without sympathy comforts, and without understanding. Every ache, every fever, every cough was a potential sentence, a test of strength and communal care. Yet out of this suffering came an indomitable will to survive, adapt, and care, a legacy that echoes through the millennia to the modern day. When you think about the silent battles fought by our ancestors, the whispered grunts of pain and hope beneath the stars, it becomes clear how deeply sickness shaped the human story. from the very beginning. Life in the Paleolithic era was a relentless, brutal affair, where survival depended on strength, cunning, and a bit of luck. Yet among the most insidious dangers lurking beyond saber-toothed cats and harsh weather was illness, an invisible, unforgiving adversary that could strike anyone without warning. Long before the discovery of antibiotics, vaccines, or even the most basic hygiene practices, early humans faced diseases with no understanding of their causes and no real means of cure. This world was one where the concept of getting sick carried a heavy and often fatal weight, where every cough, ache, or fever could be a harbinger of death, and where remedies were as mysterious as the sicknesses themselves. In this environment, prehistoric illnesses, many with names no modern person could pronounce, and certainly no Paleolithic person could understand, were a common, terrifying reality, shaping human lives, societies, and even evolution in profound ways. The cradle of humankind. You're still barefoot, still hungry, still confused. But now the glaciers have faded from the horizon, replaced by golden savannas, acacia trees silhouetted against a blinding sky, and the distant echo of cicadas. You've moved, not just through time, but through place. You're in East Africa now, somewhere near what would one day become Ethiopia, Kenya, or Tanzania. The land rolls and glows with ancient heat. The wind carries dust, and with it, the echoes of the first human footsteps. This is the cradle of humankind. And no, you still don't know how to survive here. The sun is punishing. It leans on your shoulders like a second body, and the shade is a rare luxury. The ground crunches underfoot with dry grasses and cracked dirt. You're scanning the horizon for a water bottle you know won't be there. Your skin, pampered by moisturizers and climate control, has already begun to burn. The insects love you. They sense your softness, your unfamiliarity, your glowing vulnerability. Welcome to the place where humanity began, and the place where your modern skill set is, frankly, a joke. Let's talk about what this place is and why it matters. Around 2 to 3 million years ago, this stretch of Africa was the stage for a miracle of evolution. Here, early hominins stood up, not all at once, and not to make a point, but because it worked. Walking upright freed their hands, widened their view, and made survival a little more likely. Australopithecus, Homo habilis, and later Homo erectus all left footprints in this ancient soil. Some of those footprints, miraculously preserved in volcanic ash, are still visible today at places like Laetoli in Tanzania. These were not humans as you know them, but they were on the path. They used tools, crude, sharp stones to break bones and butcher meat. They may have known how to control fire. They lived in small groups, moved constantly, and made decisions based not on comfort, but necessity. Life was raw, physical, and unforgiving. And yet, it worked. You're squinting now. The sun doesn't take breaks. There's no air conditioning, no SPF 50 sunscreen, no floppy hat. You try to cup your hands for shade, but your arms are already tired. Your stomach rumbles, but there's no snack bar on the savannah. You see a fig tree in the distance, but you have no idea if it's the good kind or the kind that will leave you vomiting into the dust. The people who lived here, our ancient ancestors, knew, not because they were told, but because they lived it. Knowledge wasn't optional. It was inherited, like eye color or strong legs. A child learned by watching. A mistake wasn't a lesson, it was often the end. Water, for instance, wasn't a bottle you grabbed on the way out the door. It was a journey, sometimes half a day, sometimes more. The places where water pooled or seeped were remembered, guarded, shared among kin. To lose your way in this world meant dehydration, and dehydration here meant death beneath the vulture-dotted sky. You glance around for signs of life, and you find it. An impala springs across the horizon, birds gossip in the branches. A troop of baboons regards you with suspicion. They know you don't belong. Your movements are awkward, your scent is wrong, even your silence is loud. But there's something in you, deep in your bones, that remembers. Something ancient, something curled in your DNA like a fossil. You feel it faintly when the wind brushes your skin, a recognition, a homecoming, because this was home, for all of us. The cradle of humankind isn't just a poetic phrase, it's a geographic and evolutionary truth. The Great Rift Valley, stretching through East Africa, is littered with the bones of those who came before. Fossils of upright walkers, tool makers, scavengers, survivors. Layers upon layers of history written in bone, sediment, and volcanic ash. Every fragment tells a story of adaptation, of trial, of one more day against the odds. You, on the other hand, are looking for Wi-Fi. Instead, you find a patch of shade beneath a scrubby tree. It's not much, but it's cooler than the sunlit earth. You sit, awkwardly, watching ants march with purpose. They know what they're doing. You less so. You consider trying to nap, but then you hear something rustle in the tall grass. It might be nothing. It might be a snake, or a lion, or just the wind playing tricks on your mind. Fear here is not irrational. It's wisdom. It's your body reminding you that you are no longer at the top of the food chain. You are meat that walks, and the predators know it. Still, somehow our ancestors thrived. They developed tools, yes, but more importantly, they developed memory, culture, shared understanding. Even language, though not as we know it, was beginning to form. Grunts, gestures, patterns of sound that carried meaning. A warning call, a call for help, a lullaby hummed beside a fire. You sit in the dust and imagine that fire, the crackle, the warmth, the illusion of safety in the dark. A group huddled close, watching, always watching. Eyes reflecting the flicker. Faces etched by smoke and starlight. There's no storytelling yet, no myths, but there is presence, and presence is enough. As the sun begins its slow descent, the sky shifts to amber and rose. The shadows lengthen. The land seems to exhale. You feel the day's heat lifting off your shoulders, replaced by the promise of a cooler night, and with it the return of things that hunt in darkness. You shiver, though the air is still warm. In this place at this time, you are no one. No job title, no digital profile, just a creature among creatures, lost in the place where life began. And yet, there's awe here too. The cradle of humankind isn't just where you fail, it's where you start. It's a reminder that your ancestors walked this land with no tools but sharp rocks and sharper minds. That every comfort you now enjoy began here, under this same sky. And that survival once meant knowing the taste of roots, the calls of birds, the scent of rain before it fell. You lie back on the earth. The soil is warm. A bird circles overhead. You close your eyes. Maybe tomorrow you'll learn how to make fire, or find water without dying. Maybe tomorrow you'll earn your place. But for now, let the ancient wind hum its lullaby. You're home, even if you have no idea what you're doing. Meet the family, Homo habilis to Homo sapiens. Imagine yourself at a very slow-moving family reunion, one that spans over 2 million years. No one has smartphones, name tags, or matching t-shirts. Instead, there are heavy brows, strong jaws, stone tools, and an awful lot of grunting. This is your extended evolutionary family, stretching from Homo habilis to Homo sapiens. You won't find picnic tables here. What you will find are the early architects of your existence, the thinkers, the walkers, the survivors who stumbled, chiseled, and fire-tamed their way through the harshest environments Earth could muster. And they did it all without shoes. It begins with Homo habilis, handyman, who emerged around 2.4 million years ago in Africa. Not the most elegant ancestor, but important nonetheless. Short with long arms and a modest brain, habilis didn't invent tools so much as he picked up sharp rocks and figured out how not to stab himself with them. But this first flirtation with tools set everything in motion. With simple stone flakes and rudimentary chopping implements, Homo habilis carved meat from bones and possibly even cracked open skulls for the rich fatty brains inside. This wasn't just survival, it was the first step toward mastery. Fast forward a few 100,000 years and meet Homo erectus, the overachiever of the early human world. Erectus walked upright, had a much bigger brain than habilis, and was the first to truly master fire. Imagine the awe of watching flames dance for the first time, realizing it could warm your hands and cook your meat. Erectus took that wonder and ran with it, sometimes literally, all the way out of Africa and across Eurasia. With a tall frame, endurance-built legs, and a mind starting to ask what if, Homo erectus hunted in groups, built more complex tools, and may have even had the beginnings of language. They thrived for nearly 2 million years, which, in evolutionary terms, is basically forever. Alongside and after erectus came a quirky cast of relatives. Homo heidelbergensis, stocky and smart, likely gave rise to both the Neanderthals and us. Homo floresiensis, the hobbit species, was tiny, only about 3 feet tall, and lived on an island in Indonesia until surprisingly recently. Their brains were small, but they used tools and hunted small elephants. Yes, elephants. Miniature ones, sure, but still. Homo naledi, another recent discovery, may have buried their dead in caves. Their mix of primitive and advanced features has baffled scientists and made headlines. And Homo luzonensis from the Philippines adds another wrinkle to the map, showing just how far and diverse our lineage sprawled. Then there are the Neanderthals, our most famous cousins. Stockier than modern humans, with wide noses and impressive brow ridges, they were built for cold climates and tough living. But they weren't brutish, far from it. Neanderthals buried their dead, made art, and likely had a form of spoken language. They crafted tools with precision, hunted big game, and lived in complex social groups. And yes, they interbred with Homo sapiens, meaning you probably carry a little Neanderthal DNA yourself. It might even influence things like your immune system or how you respond to altitude. And finally, after all that slow climbing through the branches, we arrive at Homo sapiens, our species. The ones who painted caves, domesticated dogs, sailed oceans, and built skyscrapers. But in the beginning, we were just another primate trying to get by. We emerged in Africa around 300,000 years ago, with rounder skulls and lighter frames than our predecessors. Our brains weren't just big, they were wired for imagination, for complex language, for abstract thought. We made tools, yes, but we also made stories. Myths, music, jewelry, meaning. What set us apart wasn't just intelligence, but adaptability. We learned to live almost anywhere. We moved into deserts, mountains, frozen tundras, and thick forests. We cooperated in larger groups, passed down knowledge across generations, and formed cultures. Homo sapiens spread out of Africa around 60,000 years ago and encountered other hominins along the way. Sometimes we competed, sometimes we merged. Eventually, we became the last human species standing. But the story isn't about domination, it's about survival and inheritance. Each branch of this evolutionary tree contributed something. A way of walking, a trick for using stone, a moment of care or curiosity. The path to Homo sapiens wasn't a straight line. It was a messy, branching web of trial and error, extinction and endurance. Some cousins vanished, others became part of us. All of them mattered. So next time you look in the mirror, remember, you are not alone in there. Your brow might not be as heavy, your jaw not as jutting, but deep within you is the echo of hands that carved, feet that wandered, and eyes that watched the stars without knowing their names. Meet your family. You wouldn't be here without them. Tools, not toys. The Oldowan and Acheulean revolutions. Where rocks aren't just rocks, they're survival, status, and the start of something big. You're holding a stone now. It fits in your hand like it was made for it. Cool, heavy, silent. It doesn't look like much. Just a chip of dark basalt or maybe flint, its edge a little sharper than the rest. But to someone long ago, this was magic. This was transformation. In the slow, dreamlike drift between the firelight of early memory and the haze of prehistory, something remarkable begins to take shape. Not a discovery exactly, but a decision. A moment when an ancient hand didn't just use a rock, it made one. This is the dawn of the Oldowan. We're around 2.6 million years ago, deep in East Africa again, maybe near the Gona River system. There, among the bones of antelope and elephant, you'll find something extraordinary, deliberately fractured stones, flakes knocked off with purpose. Tools. The Oldowan toolkit is basic. A core, a flake, maybe a hammerstone. But don't let the simplicity fool you. This was the moment we stepped onto a new path. These weren't toys, they weren't decoration, they were survival. With a single flake, Homo habilis, or whichever early hominin was experimenting with this tech, could scrape meat off a bone, crack it open for marrow, slice through hide, or dig in the soil. Suddenly, teeth and claws didn't matter as much. Suddenly, our ancestors had something no other animal did. External, portable, modifiable tools. And that changed everything. The Oldowan tools weren't elegant, but they were enough. Enough to expand diets. Enough to change social behavior. Because now sharing a carcass might be possible. Enough to alter brain demands. Hands had to be more precise. Eyes had to coordinate better. Minds had to remember which rocks were best and where to find them. A brain shaped by survival began shaping the world right back. Thousands of years passed, more than you can comfortably imagine. And then came another leap. The Acheulean. It begins about 1.7 million years ago and is most closely associated with Homo erectus. This time the tools look different. Not just sharp, symmetrical, intentional. Hand axes with pleasing teardrop shapes. Bifacial, that is, worked on both sides. Sometimes as much as a foot long. These weren't just tools anymore. They were plans, ambitions, maybe even status symbols. You're still drifting, nestled beside that ancient campfire in your imagination, and you can see them working, patiently striking flakes, refining edges. One mistake, and the whole tool has to be abandoned. It took practice, teaching, maybe even language. The Acheulean hand axe is sometimes called the Swiss Army knife of the Stone Age. It could chop wood, butcher game, dig for roots, break bones, and defend against predators. And yet many of them seem unused, found in pristine condition, lying in ancient riverbeds or open savannas as though they were meant to be seen as much as used. Could they have been offerings? Calling cards? Status markers for potential mates? No one knows, but their numbers are staggering. Millions have been found across Africa, Europe, and Asia. For over 1 million years, our ancestors made these tools, handed down the knowledge, taught the motions. Long before writing, long before metal, long before anything resembling history. And then one day, we moved on. The Acheulean eventually gave way to more localized, specialized tools. Flakes became finer, cores more complex, but the legacy remained. The very idea of a tool, of shaping your environment instead of letting it shape you, that stuck. You stir again, the stone in your hand now just a dream, a fading echo. But somewhere in your bones you remember. In the way you hold a knife, flip a screwdriver, swipe on a screen. That same instinct pulses, control, creativity, continuity, from flint to touchscreen. And next time you drop your phone and complain about how fragile it is, think about this. Your ancestors crafted perfect stone tools by hand, with no blueprint, no manual, and no do-overs. They did it by feel, by trial, by survival. So sleep easy, knowing your hands remember more than you know. The first tools were never toys. They were the first signs that humanity was waking up. And now, as the fire dims and the wind rustles through ancient grass, let the hush of stone and shadow lull you to sleep. You've held history in your hands, and it held you back. Tools, or how to hit rocks until something useful happens. Your flint-napping career is off to a slow and bloody start. Your hands, not yet hardened by generations of survival pressure, are nicked and sore. You've smashed your thumb more than once, and that last flake you thought was perfect, it broke into 3 useless shards the moment you tried to test its edge. Somewhere in the dusty folds of the early Pleistocene, a hairy ancestor is judging you with silent disappointment. But don't worry, this is how it always starts, because flint napping, for all its apparent simplicity, is one of the most important things any early human or human-adjacent creature ever figured out. It's also one of the most frustrating. Yet buried in every failed attempt is a kind of genius, one you can almost feel beneath your fingernails. You see, the real miracle isn't the tool, it's the idea of a tool. A rock, by itself, is just a rock. But once you decide it could become something more, a knife, a scraper, a projectile, you've already taken the first leap away from animal instinct and into human imagination. Even when your rock explodes into gravel, you're closer to Homo habilis than you think. Let's step into the stony shoes of one of our ancestors. You find a promising cobble, dense, fine-grained, maybe flint or obsidian or chert. You pick it up. It has weight, potential. Then you grab another stone, your hammerstone, heavier, round, good for striking. And now begins the dance. You angle your core stone just right and bring the hammerstone down. Not too soft, not too hard. There's a satisfying tock if you get it right. The goal is to knock off a flake, a thin shard with a sharp edge. That flake can be used immediately or shaped further. It's like peeling bark off a tree, but if the bark could slice meat and scrape hides. But you will mess up. Everyone did. Even the best nappers in prehistory had their off days. Some flakes will come off too thick, some will leave step fractures, some will refuse to detach at all. You'll look around and see a floor littered with broken dreams and sharp regrets. Yet with each mistake, your brain is building a model. It's watching the way force travels through stone. It's remembering the angle that worked last time. It's noting which material flakes cleanly and which one crumbles like stale bread. You're becoming intimate with geology in the most personal way possible by bleeding on it. Over time, patterns emerge. Certain shapes recurve. The sharpest flakes have convex curves. The most useful tools fit neatly in the hand. Pressure flaking, applying force with a bone or antler tip, offers more control. Suddenly, you're not just smashing rocks, you're sculpting them. And this isn't just about having something to cut meat with. This is about power. Tools extend your will. They make your arms longer, your teeth sharper, your skin tougher. They allow you to access new foods, build better shelters, defend your group, and signal your status. A well-made hand axe isn't just practical, it's beautiful. It's symmetrical. It shows that you're skilled, maybe even clever, maybe even worth mating with. Imagine a world where your Tinder profile is your toolkit. You swipe right on someone with a perfectly bifacial obsidian blade, because if they can make that, they probably know what they're doing. Now picture this, a small group of early humans gathered around a site strewn with flakes. One is teaching the others, grunting, gesturing, showing how to strike at the right angle. Knowledge is being passed on, not just in genes, but in memes. Cultural transmission. We're watching not evolution by natural selection, but evolution by education. And it gets more interesting. Some sites show evidence of tool making happening far from where the raw materials were collected. That means planning. Someone walked miles to get the right stone. They carried it back. They had a goal in mind. The stone wasn't just useful, it was valued. That's when tools start to change us. Not just our behaviors, but our bodies. Our hands grow more dexterous. Our brains, more capable of abstract thought. We develop better communication, more complex social networks. All because someone, somewhere, picked up a rock and thought, what if? Back in your dream of ancient days, you try again. Strike, flake, inspect. You're getting better. The edges are sharper now, the shapes more intentional. You're starting to understand the rhythm, like learning an instrument or a new language. Your muscles remember even when your mind is tired. And one day, after 100 failed cores, something beautiful happens. A flake peels off with a ringing snap. It's perfect, razor sharp, just the right shape. You pick it up, turn it in the light, it glows a little in the sun. You grin through the sweat and blood. You made this. In that moment, you're not just surviving, you're creating. You're participating in one of humanity's oldest and most underappreciated arts. You've joined a lineage that stretches back millions of years. Flint knapping is your inheritance. You hold your new tool to the sky, feel its weight, and know you've hit rocks until something useful happened. And in the process, something inside you changed too. Sleep comes easier now. The ache in your hands feels earned. The fire crackles softly nearby, and the wind outside the shelter stirs the grass. Tomorrow, you'll use that tool. Maybe for food, maybe for carving, maybe for teaching the next person how to strike true. But tonight, the stone is sharp, the world is yours. No fire, no problem, until it is. Trying to survive a single night without fire and with a leaky cave roof. It's sunset in the Pleistocene, and you're about to learn what it means to feel completely, profoundly unprepared. Not in the, oops, I forgot my phone charger kind of way, but in the, I don't have fire, shelter, or a sense of whether that howl was a wolf or something worse kind of way. You've managed to make it through the daylight hours. Barely. You tripped on roots, picked the wrong berries again, and mistook a large rock for a predator more times than you're comfortable admitting. But now the sun has dipped behind the ridge, shadows are stretching long across the forest floor, and everything around you is beginning to shift. Your little cave, which had seemed so inviting earlier in the day, now looks like a damp stone mouth. It smells faintly of mildew, old moss, and something that might be animal. You scouted it this afternoon and found no signs of recent occupation, no fur, bones, or scat. But you're starting to wonder if your inspection was overly optimistic. Still, it's better than sleeping out in the open, where every rustle in the underbrush could be a saber-toothed cat checking if you'd make a tender midnight snack. Inside, you crouch near the entrance, trying to decide what to do with your bundle of sticks. You gathered them like a champion, dry twigs, some thicker branches, even a bit of bark for kindling. But there's one small problem. You have no fire. You know that fire is important. It's warmth. It's light. It's a signal to predators that you're not completely defenseless. And it's comfort. A small, flickering promise that you might make it through the night without freezing to death or being eaten. You tried making fire, of course. You rubbed sticks together until your palms blistered. You struck rocks against each other in increasingly desperate combinations. You even blew on a few hopeful sparks, only to watch them fizzle like your optimism. Eventually, you gave up and sulked inside your cave, hugging your knees while the temperature dropped with every passing minute. Now, it's truly dark. You've wrapped yourself in the only thing resembling warmth, a loose rabbit hide blanket, still a bit damp from the morning dew. It's itchy, it smells, it doesn't cover your feet, and it offers as much insulation as a damp washcloth. Your breath curls into the air in pale little ghosts, and the cave's leaky roof adds a steady drip, drip, drip to the ambience. Somewhere outside, something is sniffing loudly. You freeze, hold your breath. It sniffs again. A long pause, then silence. You tell yourself it's probably nothing. Maybe a porcupine, a curious badger, something small and cowardly. You repeat this several times, even though your heart is thudding in your chest like a mammoth's drumbeat. You pull the rabbit hide tighter, even though one ear keeps slipping down and tickling your shoulder like it's mocking you. Time passes slowly. You try to sleep, curling up on your side on the cold stone floor. Your hip bone protests. Your shoulder goes numb. You roll over. A sharp pebble digs into your ribs. You throw it across the cave in frustration and immediately regret the noise. It echoes, loudly. You wait, breathless, listening for a response. The only reply is the ever-present drip of water from the cave roof, now landing on your forehead with cruel precision. You inch away. It follows. Hours pass, or what feel like hours. There's no way to tell. No clock, no fire, no sky. Just darkness. Absolute, suffocating darkness. Your eyes strain for shapes, outlines, anything, but the cave gives you nothing. Your brain starts filling in the gaps. That shadow near the back? It moved. Didn't it? You stare harder. It doesn't move again. Probably just your imagination. Probably. You try humming softly to yourself. It helps. A little. The sound of your own voice is grounding, even if you're mostly mumbling nonsense and lullabies half remembered from a future that hasn't happened yet. Your voice is hoarse. You haven't had water in a while. You meant to drink from the stream before nightfall, but you got distracted trying to chase off a flock of birds that stole your half-eaten root. A shiver racks your body. It's cold now, bone-deep cold, the kind that settles into your joints and whispers that it's not going anywhere. You curl tighter, teeth chattering, trying to find warmth in your own skin. You think about fire again, about the way it would crackle and snap, about the warm orange glow dancing on cave walls, about the smell of smoke, the comforting hum of shared warmth, the way even strangers huddle close when fire is involved. You miss it. You'd give anything for it. You even briefly consider chewing on 2 sticks out of spite. Outside an owl calls. Low, eerie. Then silence again. The night is thick with the kind of stillness that feels like it's waiting for something. The forest is no longer yours. You are a visitor now, tolerated only because you are quiet, small, and unimportant. You've never felt less like a top predator in your life. Eventually, something changes. Not outside. The darkness and the cold remain, but within you. A kind of resignation, perhaps. You stop flinching at every sound. You stop checking the cave entrance every 5 seconds. You accept, in the way that only exhaustion can bring, that you're not going to get fire tonight. You're not going to get warmth. You're not going to get a good night's sleep. But you might get through the night. And somehow, that thought is enough to let you drift into something resembling rest. Not sleep exactly, but a kind of soft awareness that slips in and out like a tide. You dream of warmth, of dancing flames and friendly voices. You dream of hands clapping your back, of stories shared under starlight, of someone who knows how to strike the right stones together and coax flame from dust. You dream of dawn. And then, miraculously, it comes. Not all at once, but in slow, silver streaks across the cave floor. A hint of pale blue replaces the ink-black sky. Birds begin to chirp, tentative and curious. The world begins to return, piece by piece. You sit up slowly, your back aching, your legs stiff. Your rabbit hide is tangled around you like a defeated scarf. You survived. You didn't get eaten. You didn't freeze. You didn't conquer the night, but you endured it. And here in the Pleistocene, that counts for something. Outside the cave, a soft mist clings to the ground. The air smells fresh, damp, alive. You stretch, yawn, and feel the sun's first rays warming your face. A sudden surge of relief catches you off guard. You made it through your first night without fire. And with that single night behind you, you realize something else. Next time, you will make fire. Somehow. Because you now know exactly what it feels like not to have it, and that might just be the best motivation of all. Tools, or how to hit rocks until something useful happens. Your flint knapping career is off to a slow and bloody start. The first problem is your hands. They are soft, smooth, and entirely unprepared for the delicate art of hitting one rock with another until a knife appears. You sit cross-legged on the cold earth, squinting at a pile of questionable stones while your stomach grumbles like distant thunder. A flint core lies in your lap. You pick up a hammerstone, already feeling a bit smug because it looks like something that could be in a museum. It isn't, of course. It's just a rock, but you're determined. You're going to invent tools, or rather, reinvent them, badly. Your first strike is too weak, a gentle tap. The rock does not flake, it does not sparkle, it does not obey. It simply absorbs the insult and sits there, unmoved, as though to say, "Try harder, amateur." Your second strike is too strong. The flint cracks, and not in the useful sharp-edged way you were hoping. It splits awkwardly, sending a small shard into your thumb. Blood beads to the surface. You stare at it for a moment, confused. This wasn't in the brochure. You suck your thumb and glare at the flint. Somewhere nearby, a crow cackles from a low branch, clearly enjoying the show. Welcome to the Stone Age, where progress is measured in inches, bandages don't exist, and a single working cutting tool can take all day to make. If you're lucky, patient, and not distracted by hunger, cold, or the small but non-zero chance of saber-toothed death. This is the age of flint knapping. You, unfortunately, are not very good at it. You watch an elder from your group, a quiet figure with sinewy arms and permanent squint lines, work the stone with calm, methodical taps. They cradle the core like an egg, coaxing blades from it with practiced grace. Each flake comes away with a razor edge. It's mesmerizing and annoying. You try to mimic them, but your hands betray you again. Too slippery, too tentative, too modern. Another failed flake falls into your lap, as useless as the last. You now have a growing pile of stone fragments and a fresh scrape on your wrist. Your neighbors are unimpressed. Let's rewind for a moment and consider what you're trying to do. You're attempting the earliest known form of manufacturing, striking two rocks together to break one in a controlled way. It's called knapping, from an old word meaning to strike, and it requires you to understand something fundamental about rocks, how they fracture. Flint, obsidian, chert, these stones break in predictable conchoidal patterns, like ripples in glass, or so they say. For you, the patterns are unpredictable, mostly shaped like disappointment. Eventually, you manage a flake that doesn't look completely terrible. It's small, sharp, and might actually cut something if you squint hard and pretend you know what you're doing. You hold it up with pride, blood still seeping from your thumb. It gleams in the light. Success at last. Then you drop it. You lean over to search for it in the dirt. It's gone, vanished, possibly swallowed by the earth out of pity. Or maybe a squirrel took it. You'll never know. This is the harsh truth of the prehistoric toolmaker's life. Every achievement is fragile. Your tools don't last long. They chip, dull, and disappear. Even a decent hand axe, an elegant teardrop-shaped chunk of stone, sharp around the edges, weighty in the hand, requires skill and time. It can take an experienced snapper dozens of minutes to make a good one. For you, hours, maybe days, assuming your fingers survive that long. And what are you using them for? Everything. Cutting hides, shaving wood, scraping meat off bones, digging, defending yourself. There is no Swiss Army knife in your loincloth, just a pocket full of blisters and hope. Without tools, survival slips through your fingers like wet clay. With them, you have a fighting chance, though not much more than that. You give it another go, this time trying to make a scraper. You cradle a flake and chip at it with a smaller stone, refining its edge. It begins to take shape. Then you drop that one too. You begin to suspect the earth is laughing at you. To make matters worse, the others are watching. A few children giggle from behind a mossy log. One of the older hunters chuckles softly, then returns to sharpening his own blade with expert rhythm. You are the village entertainment now, the modern visitor who can't even make a pointy thing from rocks. But this is the Stone Age. There are no shortcuts, no tutorials, no pre-made kits. Every skill must be earned the hard way, through repetition, error, and bloodied fingers. The elders don't laugh to be cruel. They laugh because they remember. Everyone starts here, sitting cross-legged on the dirt, humiliated by geology. You begin to understand the depth of this world. Tools are not just survival. They are memory, culture, identity. The styles change by region. Clovis points in the Americas, Acheulean axes in Africa, Mousterian blades in Europe. Each speaks of a people, their hunts, their migrations, their ingenuity. A single flint flake tells a story. Who made it, where they came from, how they lived, what they feared. And you? You're trying to tell your first story. You want to make a blade that matters. Something sharp enough to cut a strip of meat, carve a piece of wood, or impress the unimpressible Neanderthal who passed your camp yesterday with an eyebrow raised and a better toolkit dangling from his belt. Eventually, with the sun lowering and your legs numb from sitting, you manage to craft a rough cutting edge. It's not elegant, it's not symmetrical, but it cuts. You test it on a piece of hide and smile when it slices through. You've done it, you've made a tool. You are, by the most generous definition, a Stone Age human. Just in time too, because tomorrow you'll need to use it. And by use, we mean flail around trying to butcher a dead animal while fending off scavengers and silently weeping about how much you miss grocery stores. But tonight you rest. Your hands throb. Your tools, well, tool, singular, lies by your side. A small triumph, a whisper of progress. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear the first echoes of technology humming faintly through the stones. Still, it's worth remembering. You wouldn't last a day as a prehistoric human. Not because you're not clever, but because you thought this would be easy. It's not. It never was. And you haven't even tried hunting yet. Hunter-gatherer grocery list. You wake up at dawn, not because you want to, but because the chill gnaws through the seams of your poorly stitched hide blanket, and the wind has found the one spot on your back not covered in rabbit fur. Your stomach growls, a sound louder than anything else in the still morning. Welcome to another beautiful day in the Upper Paleolithic. The Ice Age is going strong, your tools are still terrible, and your only goal is to find enough food to make it to tomorrow. Let us begin with a simple truth. There are no grocery stores. There is no warm fire waiting beside a heaping pot of root stew. You are the grocery store, the delivery service, the cook, and, most unfortunately, the dishwasher. Your hands are your only basket. Your eyes scan the frosted underbrush for berries that haven't yet shriveled. Your knees ache from crouching over tufts of edible grasses that resemble optimism more than actual sustenance. Your ancestors, bless their frostbitten souls, survived through a delicate mix of knowledge, instinct, and luck. The forest is not your friend. It is a chaos of confusing smells, dangerous creatures, and mushrooms that promise either dinner or death. You pick a few acorns off the ground, toss aside the bitter ones, which is all of them, and wonder what culinary genius first thought, hey, if we boil these 6 times and mash them with ash, maybe we won't die. Welcome to foraging. It sounds romantic, at least from the warmth of a modern couch, reconnecting with nature, finding wild food, living like your ancestors. But here, on the ground covered in dirt, with twigs poking into places twigs should never go, the charm fades quickly. Wild onions sting your eyes. Tubers demand to be dug up from what feels like solid rock. Every plant seems to have a poisonous cousin, and there is no guidebook to tell you which is which, only trial and error. And those errors are often fatal. You trudge through the underbrush with an empty sack of woven grass, looking for signs. Your group's best forager, the one with the mysterious ability to smell edible roots beneath the soil, has wandered off to find her secret patch and refuses to share its location. She's probably eating cattails behind a rock somewhere while you gnaw on sour berries and pretend they're filling. Spoiler, they are not. Eventually, someone in your group manages to unearth a few edible roots, starchy, fibrous things that taste like mud but technically count as food. A small celebration erupts, which is quickly squashed by the eldest member of the tribe, who reminds everyone that winter is coming. You want to tell him that winter is always coming, that winter never really left, but you keep that thought to yourself. He once tried to trade you for a fox pelt. Now comes the second part of your daily grocery run, protein. Unlike modern meals, which arrive perfectly portioned in plastic, Meat in the Stone Age comes with teeth, claws, and a tendency to run away, or charge, or both. You are not the top of the food chain, despite what your upright posture may suggest. Your hunting tools are rudimentary. A pointed stick, a few chipped stones, maybe a net woven from animal sinew if you're feeling fancy. You stalk the edges of a frozen meadow, watching a herd of wild goats. They watch you back. You are not as stealthy as you hoped. Hours pass. You throw a rock. It bounces off a tree. A bird startles and flies away, mocking you with every flap of its wings. By the end of the day, someone in your tribe manages to hit a rabbit with a sling. You all cheer as if they brought down a mammoth. That rabbit will be dinner for 7. Nobody will be full. The cooking process is equally sophisticated. There is no salt. There are no herbs, unless you want to count the wilted green stuff that tastes like despair. You toss everything into a pot made of clay and hope it doesn't crack from the heat. Root stew again, always root stew. The rabbit meat is gone in 2 bites. You chew on a boiled root and try to pretend it's stew from the future. It is not. It is beige, bland, and somehow both soft and stringy. As night falls, you gather with your tribe around the fire. The day's hunt is discussed in reverent tones, each missed shot turned into an epic tale of cunning prey. You are exhausted, sore, and still hungry, but for a moment you feel something like contentment. There is warmth, the faint satisfaction of not dying, and the illusion of a full belly. The hunter-gatherer diet was varied but seasonal. Some days were rich in berries, insects, and small game. Other days offered only bark, roots, and disappointment. Your ancestors adapted by remembering which plants bloomed when, which paths the animals favored, and how to survive on nothing but water and grit. This knowledge was passed down in grunts, gestures, and the occasional charred finger pointing at a leaf. It was survival by memory, not manual. And of course there were the failures. The time your cousin tried to eat what turned out to be wolf scat. The day a fruit that looked exactly like the edible kind left half the tribe vomiting for hours. The unlucky episode involving fermented roots, a very confused bear, and a cave that still smells of regret. Each misstep was a lesson, if you live to remember it. You lie down on your bed of furs and grasses, stomach growling again. Tomorrow will be more of the same. Wander, dig, scrape, chew, survive. The modern idea of 3 square meals a day is laughable here. You're lucky if you find one. You're luckier still if that meal doesn't fight back or try to poison you. As you drift into sleep, the cold once again wrapping around your limbs like a determined predator, you wonder how your ancestors did this for millennia. The answer is simple. They had no choice. They adapted or died. And somehow, through all the roots, the rabbits, and the relentless, flavorless stew, they lived long enough to give rise to you. Tomorrow, you'll try a different patch of forest. Maybe you'll find something new. Maybe the forager with the secret CRADLE stash will share her bounty. Maybe root stew won't be on the menu. It will. Good night, Paleolithic shopper. Sweet dreams of stone tools and flavorless tubers. So you want to hunt a mammoth. Let us be clear about one thing. Hunting a mammoth is not a side quest. It is not a spontaneous afternoon activity. It is not something you do lightly or alone or without a plan that involves everyone from your bravest spear thrower to your fastest child runner. Hunting a mammoth is serious business. A colossal, dangerous, ice age production that could feed your entire group for weeks or kill half of you trying. Mammoths are not mythical beasts. They are very real, very large, and very cranky. Imagine an elephant, but taller, furrier, and with tusks that curve like massive ivory scythes. They can weigh as much as 10 tons and are capable of turning a human into a smear on the tundra with a single step. And yet, despite the odds, your ancestors did it. Again and again. Because mammoth meat was worth the risk. The hide could be tents, shoes, and coats. The bones, tools, and shelter frames. The fat, life-saving fuel for fire. Killing one was like winning the Stone Age lottery. But you don't just walk up to a mammoth with a sharp stick and hope for the best. No, first comes planning. Your group has probably been tracking the herd for days, maybe weeks. You've watched them migrate along ancient paths, studied their habits, noted which ones are old, limping, or separated from the group. Ideally, you want the slow one, the loner, the mammoth whose best years are behind it. Before the hunt begins, there is ceremony, ritual, respect. The mammoth is not just an animal, it is a being of great power. Elders mark their faces with ochre. Hunters sharpen stone-tipped spears by firelight. Children are told stories of hunts gone right and hunts gone wrong. There are no guarantees. Everyone knows this. The morning of the hunt, you eat whatever you can. Dried roots, a handful of berries. You stretch, your legs are tense with anticipation. Your breath clouds in the cold, then silence. Everyone listens. The sound of distant trumpeting carries over the wind. The mammoths are near. You approach from downwind, always downwind. If they smell you, the hunt is over. Mammoths might look like lumbering beasts, but they can run, and their stampedes are earthquakes. Some groups use fire, waving torches and shouting to funnel the animal toward a trap. Others dig pits, cover them with branches, and bait them with vegetation. Some use natural terrain, narrow valleys or icy ledges, to corner the mammoth where it cannot escape. And then the moment comes. The chosen mammoth is isolated. It bellows in confusion. Spears fly, a chorus of voices erupts, shouts of warning, cries of courage. Blood steams in the cold air. The mammoth charges, striking one of your hunters and throwing him like a rag doll. But the group persists. Spears are driven in again and again, stone biting through fur and hide. The mammoth falters, knees buckle. A final long moan fills the air. Then, silence. The animal collapses and no one moves for a long moment, not out of fear, out of reverence. You gather around it, touch its flank, whisper thanks. The elders sing. Children, wide-eyed, are kept back. The work now begins. Skinning, butchering, preserving. Nothing is wasted. Fat is rendered. Bones are cleaned. The heart is shared among the bravest hunters. It is not just a feast, it is a victory, one you will remember in story and song. But not all mammoth hunts end this way. Sometimes the spear shatters. Sometimes the mammoth turns too quickly, too violently. Sometimes the ice gives way. The group mourns, names are remembered, and still, the hunt must go on. Because winter is not a visitor here. It is a permanent neighbor. And hunger is always just around the corner. You might think in your modern kitchen with heat and leftovers that this was barbaric, but this is life in the Pleistocene. Real, raw, and beautifully hard. Mammoth hunting was not a display of dominance. It was a negotiation with nature, an act of skill, courage, desperation, and gratitude. Tonight, you sit around the fire, belly full, hide warm. You hear the elders recount your bravery, even if all you did was hold a spear and not drop it. That too is worth remembering. So you wanted to hunt a mammoth. Now you have, and now you understand. Close your eyes. The fire crackles. A tusk glints in the flickering light. And somewhere out there in the dark, the herd moves on, silent and immense, unaware that one of their own has changed the course of human survival. Home is where the boulder is. Your first Paleolithic real estate tour. Drafty caves, dirt beds, and no walls. Welcome to the Paleolithic housing market. It's limited, it's local, and you'll be lucky if your new place doesn't already belong to a hibernating bear. As a newly upright, fire-discovering, semi-organized band of hunter-gatherers, you and your tribe have finally begun to entertain a novel concept, settling down for more than one night. You want shelter, something sturdier than a pile of leaves and more private than sleeping under the same tree as everyone else's lives. So here we are, your first Paleolithic real estate tour. Let's begin with the classic, the cave. Caves are the luxury condos of the Upper Paleolithic. Prime real estate, solid walls, built-in roof, natural insulation, and best of all, they're already there. You don't have to build a thing. That is, of course, unless you count building the courage to share one with snakes, bats, and the aforementioned bear that seems very committed to staying through winter. As you step into your first open house, a dark, yawning cavity in a limestone cliff, you immediately notice the smell. Stale air, mixed with animal droppings and wet stone. The floor is a tangle of roots and ancient moss, the ceiling perpetually dripping some mysterious liquid that probably isn't poisonous. A breeze blows through a crack in the rear wall. Natural ventilation, says your imaginary Paleolithic real estate agent, who is just your cousin wearing extra feathers and pretending to know things. You take a cautious step forward. A bat squeaks. You squeak louder. So much for bravery. Still, it's not without its perks. Caves offer reliable protection from the elements. When the wind outside howls like a ghost with indigestion, you're tucked away in a shadowy alcove, shivering only slightly less than if you were outside. When it rains, your bed of furs stays mostly dry, except for that one spot where water always seems to pool, no matter how many mammoth hide patches you lay down. Space is communal. There's no my corner in a cave, only slightly less crowded spot near the fire. Privacy? Unheard of. Every snore, every stomach growl, every ill-timed digestive sound is heard by everyone else and promptly turned into a story around the next day's fire. Romance is whispered, if at all. Arguments are public. Babies cry and no one sleeps, except for the baby. Now let's say the cave market is saturated. You're late to the migration season and the good ones are taken. It's time to tour alternative options. Next stop, the lean-to. The lean-to. Minimalist design meets maximum compromise. A lean-to is a structure made of a few large sticks propped against a tree or boulder, then covered with animal hides, leaves, or woven grass. It's like someone tried to build a house and gave up halfway through. It offers shade. Sometimes. It offers protection from rain. Occasionally. It offers security. Not at all. Building a lean-to is a group activity, mostly because no one really knows how to do it alone. The process involves arguing over which stick goes where, stabbing yourself with branches, and shouting at the wind when everything collapses for the fifth time. Eventually, you drape a hide over a crooked frame, throw some moss on the ground, and call it a home. The lean-to offers a degree of independence. You can decorate it with bone charms, painted stones, or a stolen eagle feather if you're feeling bold. It's your space. You chose the tree. You tied the knots. It leaks, yes, but it's your leak. And when the wind tears it down in the night, you rebuild it with pride and more knots. There's also the semi-subterranean pit house. Now we're talking architectural innovation. Pit houses are dug into the ground, offering insulation and a lower profile against predators. You scoop out a shallow depression, line it with stones, and cover the top with wooden beams and earth. It's cozy, if claustrophobic. Dark, if protected. And absolutely full of spiders. Living in a pit house requires a good sense of smell and a low tolerance for sunlight. You enter through a hole in the roof or a tunnel barely wide enough for your shoulders. Once inside, you are hit with the warmth of body heat, the acrid tang of smoke from a poorly vented fire, and the unmistakable scent of wet fur. Home sweet home. These homes are generally shared by extended families or small groups. Space is limited, so sleeping arrangements resemble stacked furs and overlapping limbs. Fire is both a blessing and a hazard. Fall asleep too close and you'll wake up with singed hair. Fall asleep too far and you wake up frozen solid. There is no middle ground. Still, pit houses are a sign of something big, permanence. People who dig into the earth plan to stay. They store things, tools, roots, dried meat. They begin to remember seasons, to mark time. A year is no longer just a loop of cold and less cold. It becomes something to plan for. A roof over your head means you might still be here in 6 moons. That's a revolution. Of course, for those always on the move, there's the open-air camp. It's exactly what it sounds like. No walls, no roof, just the sky and the elements, and your trusty fur blanket. Campfires mark sleeping spots. Stones circle cooking pits. A few baskets or slings hang from branches filled with foraged roots or a few unlucky fish. You lie down beside your spear and hope it rains somewhere else tonight. Open-air camps are common during migrations, hunting trips, or when the weather is mild enough to tempt fate. The upside is ventilation, stars, and a quick getaway if something growls in the dark. The downside is everything else. One night, you're lulled to sleep by the gentle rustle of grass and the distant calls of night birds. The next, you're woken by a wolf sniffing your foot. You don't move, you don't breathe. Eventually, it loses interest or doesn't. It's hard to tell because you pass out from fear. Regardless of your choice, cave, lean-to, pit house, or open-air camp, all Paleolithic homes share common features. Dirt floors, flammable everything, zero plumbing, and the ever-present smell of smoke, sweat, and survival. There are no windows, no doors. You wake up when the sun tells you to, and sleep when the fire gives up. Decoration is minimal but meaningful. Charcoal handprints on cave walls, arrangements of bones outside a hut, a painted shell tied with sinew and worn like a necklace. These are not luxuries. They are signals, markers of identity, memory, and place. You are here. You were here. You belong. And yet, despite the harshness, there is something comforting about these ancient homes. They are not about comfort in the modern sense. They are about function, community, and continuity. Every drafty cave tells a story. Every bent stick that forms a shelter is an act of hope. Even the pit house, dark and cramped, speaks to the first spark of settlement, a belief in tomorrow. As night descends again, you curl beneath your furs, whether beneath stones, stick, or stars. The fire crackles. Someone hums a song passed down from a time before words. Children whimper in their sleep. A dog-like creature settles beside your feet, breathing warmth into the cold night air. You stare into the dark and know this place, whatever form it takes, is your home. Not because it's warm, or dry, or private, but because it shelters the people you know. The faces you followed across rivers, over hills, through seasons. The ones who will help rebuild the lean-to, patch the cave's roof, dig the next pit, or carry you if you can no longer walk. There are no house keys, no property lines, no real estate contracts. But this place, this smoke-scented, imperfect space carved out of wilderness, is yours. For now. Sleep well, Paleolithic dreamer. Tomorrow you'll scout for another spot, maybe with fewer spiders, maybe not. But tonight, the wind is just a whisper, and the boulder keeps the cold at bay. Family ties and tribe trouble. It turns out prehistoric in-laws are just as opinionated. In the Paleolithic world, family is everything. It's not a choice, it's a constant. You eat together, walk together, hunt together, and sleep in a tangle of limbs beneath the same smoky hide tent. You share water, stories, firewood, and fleas. There are no fences, no quiet time, no spare bedroom. You do not visit your family. You are your family. And if someone is going to make your life difficult, chances are they're sitting beside you, chewing loudly on a bit of mammoth jerky. Let's talk about the early family unit. The prehistoric family wasn't a neat nuclear bundle like we like to imagine today. There weren't tidy roles with breadwinners and homemakers. There was just whoever could do what needed doing. That might mean your grandmother was better at throwing a spear than your father. It might mean your older sister taught you to trap a rabbit while your brother braided fishing nets out of plant fibers. Everyone pulled their weight, or they didn't eat. But that doesn't mean things were always harmonious. Let's say you've just partnered up. You've picked your mate through a mixture of mutual respect, awkward gift-giving, and not being related. A surprisingly big challenge in a small tribe. You've painted something nice on a rock for them, maybe gifted a freshly cracked marrow bone, and now the two of you are inseparable. Congratulations. You've just gained a new extended family. That includes your partner's parents, who are immediately suspicious of your bone cleaning technique. That's not how we did it in our band, they mutter. Back in our days, we used an antler. Not this shell nonsense. Every mealtime is a debate over which plants are safest, which fire pit is hottest, or which route leads to the best berries. Your father-in-law insists that your hide stitching is too loose. Your mother-in-law sniffs at your campfire like it personally offended her ancestors. And the problem is, you can't get away from them. There's no moving across town, no renting your own cave on the other side of the valley. If you're lucky, you might get a few feet of sleeping space behind a mammoth rib divider. That's your privacy. If your partner snores or your cousin sings too loudly at dawn, you stew silently, or not so silently. Paleolithic drama unfolds in the open. Tribes are small, anywhere from 15 to 40 people, give or take. That's barely enough to run a modern wedding, let alone an entire society. In a group that small, every relationship matters. If you offend someone, they'll remember. If you borrow a flint scraper and forget to return it, it becomes a tale passed down for generations. And that's why we never trust people from the riverside of the gorge. There are no secrets. If you're arguing with your partner, everyone knows. If you sneak a second helping of roasted roots, everyone sees. If you fall in a stream chasing a frog, that story becomes a fireside favorite before your fur has dried. But still, the tribe functions. Why? Because it has to. There's safety in numbers. That saber-tooth lurking in the bushes, it's less likely to attack 10 people than one. The storm rolling in across the mountains, you need 20 hands to fix the windbreak and keep the fire going. Your child has a fever, someone else has herbs. You're in labor and screaming at the sky, an aunt with birthing experience steps in. The tribe is your grocery store, your ER, your childcare, and your family therapy. And yes, your gossip circle too. Oh, the gossip. Prehistoric people didn't write anything down, but they sure didn't forget. Oral tradition wasn't just about heroic hunts and creation myths. It was also about who flirted with who accidentally set fire to their own bedding, and who faked a limp to get out of foraging duty. Gossip traveled faster than fire through dry grass, and every story had staying power. Remember when Tor tripped over a tortoise and cried for 3 hours? That was 10 winters ago, and we still talk about it. But not all tribe trouble is petty. Sometimes it's deeply practical. Let's say you've had a disagreement about migration. One group wants to head east to the familiar lake. Another group has heard rumors of a forest filled with game. No maps, no calendars, just gut instinct and old stories. The elders argue, the hunters argue, the mothers argue, everyone argues. And sometimes a tribe splits. It's one of the biggest risks of Paleolithic life, division. With smaller numbers, your survival becomes harder. Splitting up means fewer hunters, fewer watchful eyes at night, fewer people to mourn when someone is taken by disease or misfortune. But sometimes egos are louder than reason. A young leader with bold ideas and a bone necklace might convince half the group to follow him into the unknown. And just like that, your world changes. New alliances form, new rivalries begin, and maybe, just maybe, 20 winters from now, your grandchildren will reunite with that other half of your tribe. Now slightly different, slightly suspicious, slightly strange. They'll share roots around a fire and try not to bring up the past. Even within a stable tribe, there are roles. Elders are respected but not blindly obeyed. Wisdom matters, yes, but so does strength. So does luck. So does charisma. Sometimes the one with the loudest voice and the sharpest spear makes the rules. Other times, it's the one who knows where the mushrooms grow. Disagreements are settled in dozens of ways, through long talks, symbolic gestures, gifts, or occasionally a wrestling match that ends with everyone laughing and someone nursing a sprained ankle. And then there are the children. Every child belongs to the tribe, not just the parents. When a baby is born, hands reach out from every corner of the group. Someone provides milk. Someone makes a rattle from hollow bones. Someone sings a lullaby they barely remember learning. The child learns not from a single teacher, but from dozens. Which berries stain your mouth purple? Which stones are sharpest? How to listen to the wind. But even in this communal world, favoritism exists. That one uncle who spoils his niece with extra bites of honey. That grandmother who always defends her grandson, even when he clearly stole someone's sling. And jealousy? Oh, it blooms like mold on last week's mushrooms. Still, despite the friction, the closeness is undeniable. You don't need a holiday to see your relatives. You see them every day. You build fires together, fix shelters together, survive together. And when someone dies, the absence leaves a real felt hole in the world. Mourning isn't always loud. Sometimes it's marked by silence. A handprint painted black, a broken spear laid on a stone, a fire burned a little longer than needed. No tombstones, no names carved into rock, just memories, passed like precious flint from mouth to ear, down the winding generations. Through all of it, you endure. Through awkward tribal politics, through family arguments, through endless critiques of your mammoth roasting technique, you grow older. Maybe become an elder yourself. And when you offer advice, strong, confident, slightly exaggerated, you see a younger version of yourself rolling their eyes just out of your sight. The cycle repeats, and in the end, you realize something that prehistoric people knew instinctively. Survival is not about being alone. It's about connection. Not clean, convenient, or always pleasant, but messy, flawed, complicated connection. Whether by blood, by bond, or by necessity, your tribe is your world. You may not have a last name. You may not know your great-grandfather's name, but you know the way he threw a spear, the story of how he outran a boar, the song he sang when the cold came early, and you will pass those things on. So sleep now, weary tribe member. Ignore your brother's snoring and your aunt's passive-aggressive humming. Let the warmth of the fire and the quiet rustle of furs carry you into dreams. Tomorrow, you'll wake up with family in your face and tribe trouble at your heels. But tonight, you're part of something ancient and still enduring. Baby, it's cold outside because the ice age never ends, wrapping yourself in rabbit hide while questioning life choices. Winter isn't just a season. For Paleolithic humans, it was a constant, unrelenting state of mind. The Ice Age didn't just arrive and leave. It was more like an unwelcome house guest who overstayed their welcome by tens of thousands of years, dropping the thermostat and making every day a shiver fest. Imagine waking up every morning to frost on your breath, your fingers numb before you even grab your spear, and a landscape painted in endless gray and white. The sun? A pale, distant orb that barely warms the skin. The snow crunches underfoot. The wind cuts through the thickest layers of fur like a dull knife. Life was cold, and staying warm was a full-time job. Let's break down the daily, often frustrating quest for warmth in the Ice Age, when your survival depended on it, and every decision about clothing, shelter, and fire could be a matter of life or death. First up, clothing. Forget fashion statements. Paleolithic people wore what they could get, patched together, and keep on their backs. Mostly, this meant animal hides, deer, rabbit, reindeer, and whatever else was caught and skinned that day. Rabbit fur was popular because it was soft and warm, but it wasn't easy to sew or keep in one piece. The hides were stitched with bone needles and sinew thread, which was durable but slow work. If your stitching failed, or your hide ripped during a hunt or scramble up a cliff, you were left shivering and probably irritated. So the act of dressing yourself was less about looking good and more about assembling a wearable heat shield. You'd wrap yourself in layers, rabbit skin tunics, wolf pelts draped like cloaks, and sometimes even bear fur for the very coldest days. The hides weren't just sewn together. They were often wrapped, tied, and layered in ways that today's fashion designers might find baffling. A scrappy patchwork of warmth, secured with bone toggles or simple leather ties. And let's talk about the fit. Unlike modern clothing, which is tailored and flexible, these ancient garments were stiff, heavy, and awkward. Walking in them was a bit like trying to jog with a thick blanket wrapped around your shoulders. Moving quickly was a challenge, but the alternative was freezing. So you learned to shuffle, to conserve heat, to avoid unnecessary exertion that might rip your precious hide coat. Next, the headgear. Keeping your head warm was crucial because a lot of body heat escapes there. The obvious solution? Hats made from animal skins, often with the fur left inside to trap heat. But sewing those into shape? Another layer of complexity. Sometimes you just draped a pelt over your head, like a soft, furry helmet, and hoped for the best. Adding a hood was tricky, but a luxury if you could manage it. Your ears and nose were especially vulnerable to frostbite, and it wasn't uncommon to lose a bit of extremity in the harsh winters. Gloves and footwear were no less complicated. Wrapping your hands in hides was necessary to prevent them from freezing, but holding a spear or tying a knot with clumsy fur-lined gloves was a test of patience. Footwear, often made from stitched hides and lined with grass or moss for insulation, was essential for trudging through snow and ice. But wet feet were a curse. Once your shoes got soaked, they were slow to dry, and soggy toes were prone to frostbite and infection. Now, clothing is only half the battle. Let's move on to shelter. Remember, we're talking drafty caves, rock overhangs, and flimsy huts made from bones, hides, and branches. Your average Stone Age house was not a cozy cabin. It was a makeshift windbreak with a fire pit in the center, and the hope that the smoke would chase away some of the biting cold. Building a shelter was a painstaking process. You had to collect enough bones and tusks to create a sturdy frame. You had to find thick hides to stretch over it like a tent. Branches were woven into walls, and the whole structure had to withstand snow loads and howling winds. It wasn't unusual for your home to collapse under a heavy snowfall or get ripped apart in a sudden blizzard. Inside, the floor was packed dirt or crushed leaves. A layer of grass, moss, or animal skins helped with insulation, but the cold often seeped through. To stay warm at night, everyone huddled close to the fire, but even then, the cold was relentless. Speaking of fire, it was the heart of your survival. Mastering fire was a game changer for warmth, cooking, and protection. But fire wasn't magic. You had to tend it constantly. Gather dry wood, protect it from wind and snow, and feed it patiently. A sudden rainstorm or snow could snuff it out in minutes, and rekindling a fire from scratch was an exhausting and risky endeavor. When the fire died, so did your chances of a comfortable night. You wrapped yourself tighter in furs, snuggled next to others for shared warmth, and prayed the cold wouldn't seep in through the cracks. Now, even if you wrapped yourself head to toe in hides, gathered the best wood, and built the coziest cave shelter you could, you were still up against the Ice Age's bigger threats: starvation and exhaustion. The cold meant food was scarce, plants were frozen or gone, and hunting became more dangerous. Animals migrated, grew fewer, or hibernated. You had to travel farther and take bigger risks to find dinner. Starvation weakens your body's ability to generate heat. Your fingers go numb faster, your firewood gathering trips took longer, and your mind, fogged by cold and hunger, made more mistakes. It was a vicious cycle. So many Paleolithic people faced the grim reality of hypothermia, frostbite, or even death from exposure. Survival was a brutal, daily gamble, but humans adapted in amazing ways. They developed specialized tools to scrape hides thin enough for clothing, but thick enough to keep heat in. They crafted needles from bones so fine they could sew the tiniest stitches. They learned to read animal tracks to know where to find food during the harshest months. They shared knowledge, stories, and warnings around fires that flickered like fragile promises. Social bonds grew stronger because warmth was a shared responsibility. You couldn't survive alone in this frozen world. You huddled together in groups, sharing warmth and hope. You shared the burden of keeping the fire alive through the long night. And sometimes, when the cold pressed in hardest and the sky seemed an endless expanse of gray, someone would start to sing. A soft, haunting song, passed down through generations, about the sun's return, about summer's coming, about fire that never dies. The Ice Age might have been endless, but so was human resilience. So the next time you pull a warm blanket around your shoulders or sip hot tea by a radiator, remember the Paleolithic soul wrapped in rabbit hide, sitting by a smoky fire, questioning their life choices, but stubbornly refusing to give in. Because in that frozen world, warmth was everything, and hope was the only thing warmer. A day in the life of an early human, sunrise to sunset with aching feet, an empty stomach, and a very persistent insect problem. Imagine waking up not to the buzz of an alarm or the glow of a smartphone screen, but to the faint, cold light of a sun struggling over the horizon. The sky's a muted wash of blues and pinks, the air sharp and chilly. Your bed? A rough nest of leaves, animal pelts, and packed earth, hard and unforgiving. There are no pillows, no blankets, only the lingering dampness from last night's dew. Your body aches, muscles stiff from sleeping on the cold, uneven ground, feet sore from yesterday's long trek. Welcome to the day of an early human. The moment you open your eyes, you're immediately assaulted by the world. Not in the harsh, overstimulating way modern life often greets us, but in the stark, unfiltered reality of survival. Your senses are heightened, the sharp chill of morning air, the distant cries of birds or predators, the lingering smoke smell from the dying embers of last night's fire. But there's one unwelcome guest buzzing insistently: insects. Mosquitoes, flies, gnats. They don't just annoy, they carry disease, bite into your skin, distract your focus, and keep you awake long after the fire has died down. Your first act, trying to swat or brush them away while keeping from waking your companions, is a tiring battle. There is no bug spray or screen door, just your bare hands and the hope that the fire smoke will keep them at bay. With a grunt, you rise, joints stiff, muscles protesting. Your feet meet the cold earth, cracked and rough from constant walking, scraping over rocks, soil, and thorny brush. Blisters and cuts are common, but there's no time for rest or healing. Every step is vital. The sun slowly climbs, casting long shadows across the landscape. Your day begins. Morning routine, gathering and planning. Your first priority is food. Last night's hunt yielded little, and the gnawing emptiness in your belly sharpens your resolve. Early humans were hunters and gatherers, meaning no grocery stores, no predictable meals, just a daily quest for nourishment. You check your gear: a sharpened stone spear, a simple wooden club, a few sharpened flint blades tucked into your belt of braided leather strips. Your clothing is made of layered animal hides, stiff and heavy, but necessary to protect you from the elements and from scratches that could get infected. With the group gathered around the fire, you discuss the day's plans. Maybe a scouting party will head toward the river, where fresh water and edible plants might be found. Others might set traps or sharpen tools. Everyone has a role. Cooperation is key. No one survives alone. Before leaving, you take a moment to check traps set the previous day. Snares made from twine and sharpened sticks designed to catch small game, rabbits, birds, or even fish. Some traps are empty, but you find a small rabbit caught twitching weakly. It's not much, but enough to keep hunger at bay for a while. Midday struggles, heat, hunger, and hard labor. As the sun reaches its zenith, the day's true challenges begin. The cold of dawn gives way to a harsh sun and dry heat, making the work no easier. You and your companions trudge across rocky terrain, careful where you place your feet. Each step sends sharp reminders of fatigue through your aching souls. Finding food is unpredictable. Berries, nuts, roots, and edible leaves are scattered and seasonal. You know which ones to avoid. Some plants are toxic, others bitter or inedible. Your knowledge comes from trial, error, and shared wisdom passed down over generations. The insects remain relentless. Flies buzz around the camp, biting and annoying. Mosquitoes seek every patch of exposed skin. Swatting them away wastes precious energy, but they're inescapable. You rub mud and crushed leaves on your skin, hoping for some natural repellent effect, but it's only a slight relief. Water is another constant concern. You know the closest stream is 2 hours away. The trip means leaving the safety of the group and the fire, risking encounters with predators or rival humans. But thirst is brutal, and you cannot afford to ignore it. Afternoon, hunting and gathering, high stakes. Hunting is a blend of patience, skill, and luck. Your group stalks prey cautiously. Deer grazing in the distance, a flock of birds taking flight, a rabbit darting through the underbrush. Your spear is light but deadly in your hands, honed by practice and desperate need. The chase might be short and triumphant, or long and fruitless. A missed throw wastes precious energy, and every failed hunt weighs on morale. When successful, there's the ritual of the kill, sharing the catch, preparing the meat, keeping the group fed. Meat is valuable not just for sustenance, but also for its fat content, vital for energy and warmth. Gathering edible plants is less glamorous, but no less important. You carefully pick berries and roots, avoiding ones that cause itching or upset stomachs. Each handful is a small victory, each plant identified a step toward survival. By mid-afternoon, the group returns to camp, tired and hungry. You start a fire, scraping stones to create sparks, blowing gently to coax the flames alive. Smoke curls upward, chasing away some insects and bringing comfort. The fire offers warmth, protection, and a chance to cook the day's bounty. Evening, rest, reflection, and preparation. As the sun dips toward the horizon, your body aches. Blisters on your feet throb, your back is stiff from bending over traps and gathering plants, and your hands are raw from gripping tools and fighting off bugs. Yet, there is little rest. The evening means preparing for nightfall, the coldest and most dangerous time. You help skin the animals, stretch hides for new clothing, and mend torn furs. Firewood must be gathered to keep the fire burning throughout the night. Someone must keep watch, alert to any threats, while others sleep. You sit near the fire, the warmth a small comfort against the chill. Your stomach rumbles. Sometimes it's barely full enough to dull the pain of hunger. You chew on tough dried meat or bitter roots, savoring the taste even when it's harsh. The insects settle in for the night too, drawn to the heat and light. You shoo away mosquitoes with practiced swats, but some bites are inevitable. They itch and sting, adding to your fatigue and discomfort. The sky darkens, stars emerging like tiny pinpricks of hope in the cold night. You listen to the crackling fire, the low murmurs of your companions, the distant calls of nocturnal animals. Sleep is restless. The cold seeps in through cracks in the shelter, and dreams are filled with hunger and fear. Final thoughts. The harsh reality and the human spirit. A day in the life of an early human was no leisurely stroll, but a grueling marathon of survival. From sunrise's first chill to sunset's fading glow, every moment was spent battling nature's merciless elements, aching bodies, gnawing hunger, and the endless assault of biting insects. Yet despite the hardships, aching feet, empty stomachs, and swarms of pests, our ancestors endured. They adapted, learned, and thrived. The dawn of humanity was not born of ease, but of relentless perseverance. And as you lay down on your rough bed, the fire's dying embers casting flickering shadows, you realize this harsh world, though brutal and unforgiving, forged the human spirit. One day, long after the last ice age thawed and technology blossomed, someone would look back and marvel that it all began here, wrapped in rabbit hides, plagued by insects, and driven by the stubborn refusal to give up. The original life hack: warmth, cooking protection, and a 73% chance of setting your hair on fire. There's a reason fire is often called humanity's first true technology. Long before stone tools were shaped with precision, before language was formalized into stories, before art adorned cave walls, fire was the glowing, flickering spark that changed everything. It was warmth in the cold, a tool for cooking, a weapon against predators, and a social magnet that gathered people together under one smoky, crackling glow. But as miraculous as fire was, it was also unpredictable, dangerous, and often disastrous. The spark of survival. Imagine a night deep in the Paleolithic age. Temperature drops sharply as the sun dips behind jagged mountains. Your breath curls like smoke in the frosty air, and your body shivers despite the layers of animal hides wrapped around you. Darkness is a thick curtain, thick enough to hide a stalking predator or an unwelcome rival tribe. Without light, your world shrinks to the fire's immediate circle of warmth. That flickering orange light is not just comfort, it's survival. Fire was your shield. The smoke kept insects away, the flames warded off wolves and bears, and the heat thawed frozen fingers and toes. It transformed raw meat, tough and risky to eat, into cooked food that was easier to chew and digest. Cooked food gave you more energy and more brain fuel, allowing for the evolutionary leaps that made humans smarter, stronger, and more adaptable. But making fire was not as simple as rubbing sticks together like cartoons suggest. It took practice, skill, and patience. Flint stones were struck together to create sparks. Dried grass and bark served as tinder. One wrong move and the tinder burst into a wild blaze, or the spark sputtered out, leaving you in darkness and cold. Fire as a daily companion. Fire wasn't just a tool, it was part of daily life, a constant presence from dawn to dark. Your day began with reigniting the fire from the embers saved from last night, blowing gently to coax the glowing coals back into flame. Those first sparks brought relief after a cold night. The warm light dispelled the lingering shadows that held the unknown. During the day, fire was tended carefully. Wood was collected, chopped, and stacked. Green branches made smoke, dry twigs made flame. Too little fuel and the fire died, leaving you vulnerable. Too much fuel and the flames could rage out of control, threatening the fragile shelter of your cave or lean-to. The fire circle was also a place of social gathering. Stories were shared of the day's hunt, of spirits and dreams, of ancestors and the mysteries of the world. Firelight flickered on faces, making them seem almost magical, binding the tribe with shared warmth and shared fears. The game changer. Perhaps the most revolutionary gift of fire was cooking. Before fire, humans ate raw meat, roots, and whatever could be scavenged. Raw meat was hard to chew and digest, and it harbored bacteria and parasites. Cooking transformed food, unlocking nutrients and calories that were previously inaccessible. Meat roasted on hot stones or skewered on sticks, slowly turning over flames. The aroma of cooked food was intoxicating, drawing everyone close. Cooked roots became softer and sweeter, nuts lost bitterness, and even tough tubers were rendered edible. Cooking also extended food's shelf life, reducing waste and the risk of illness. And in colder climates, fire helped keep food from freezing solid. Yet cooking wasn't always smooth. Hot embers scorched fingers, flames singed hair, and smoke filled eyes with tears. The risk of setting your hair or clothes on fire was real, and often realized. A careless lean toward the flames could mean a painful burn or worse. The danger zone, playing with fire. Fire was a double-edged sword. While it offered protection and sustenance, it also posed grave risks. Children, curious and restless, were especially vulnerable. Many a toddler's wild hair caught flame while playing too close to the hearth. Adults, too, had their moments of misfortune. Quick movements near the fire resulted in singed eyebrows or burned hands. Sparks could ignite dry grass or leaf piles near the cave entrance, leading to devastating wildfires. Fires sometimes spread beyond control, forcing groups to abandon their shelters and flee, losing their homes and food stores. Even smoke could be lethal. Poor ventilation in caves filled lungs with choking fumes. Long exposure meant respiratory problems and eye infections. Fire as a protector and a weapon. But fire wasn't only about warmth and cooking, it was also defense. A well-maintained fire deterred nocturnal predators, those wolves and bears that circled with hungry eyes. The glow was a warning sign, a boundary they dared not cross. Tribes might use fire offensively too. Controlled burns cleared brush, making hunting easier or opening new areas for settlement. Fire could flush out game from hiding places, forcing prey into the open. In disputes between groups, fire could be a terrifying weapon. Throwing flaming branches or igniting enemy camps was a form of prehistoric warfare. The ability to control and wield fire added a new dimension to human power. The ritual of fire. Fire also held symbolic meaning. It was often seen as sacred or magical, a gift from the gods or spirits. Keeping the fire alive was a sacred duty, one that might fall to a particular tribe member. When fire went out, the event was catastrophic. Without it, there was no light, no warmth, no cooked food, and no protection. Starting fire from scratch could take hours or days. Thus, fire was often transported as glowing embers in clay pots or kept alive in carefully managed hearts. The act of fire making became ritualized. Early humans might have developed ceremonies around rekindling the fire, celebrating the light that kept darkness and death at bay. The first sparks were greeted with relief and awe, proof of life's persistence. Conclusion. Fire, humanity's first life hack. Fire was humanity's ultimate life hack. A simple force of nature harnessed with ingenuity and courage. It shaped diets, social structures, defense strategies, and even spiritual beliefs. Yet it was a wild, unpredictable partner, one that required respect, skill, and constant attention. The same fire that cooked your meat and warded off wolves could, in an instant, destroy your shelter or singe your hair. As you lie down tonight, imagining the crackling flames and smoky air of those early fires, remember that this dangerous, mesmerizing glow was the spark that set humans on the path to civilization. It was warmth against cold, light against darkness, and life itself, flickering stubbornly against the vast unknown. Saber-toothed cats don't negotiate. A gentle reminder that you are very much prey. Long before the rise of modern predators, wolves, lions, or even the stealthy big cats we see today, Earth was home to some truly formidable hunters. Among them, none struck quite as much fear into the hearts of early humans as the saber-toothed cat, a predator so terrifying and efficient that it reshaped the very way our ancestors lived, hunted, and survived. Known scientifically as Smilodon, but often simply called the saber-toothed tiger, though not a true tiger, this prehistoric apex predator embodied the brutal realities of life in the Paleolithic. No matter how clever or courageous a human might have been, the saber-toothed cat reminded everyone, you are prey. The predator, a portrait of power. Imagine a colossal feline, as big as a modern lion but more robust and muscular, prowling the twilight edges of an ancient woodland or open plain. Its most distinctive feature, two enormous curved canine teeth that extended well beyond its lower jaw, resembling gleaming sabers of ivory. These teeth were not just for show, they were weapons honed by millions of years of evolution for a deadly purpose, to slice through the thick hides and muscles of large prey with terrifying efficiency. But these teeth came with trade-offs. The saber-toothed cat's jaw could only open to a limited angle to protect those deadly fangs. It relied on power rather than speed, ambushing prey with a short burst of explosive force rather than chasing them down over long distances. This cat was a specialist, a master of the surprise attack. A world where humans were not the hunters. Now imagine yourself in that world, not yet the apex predator, but a relatively small and vulnerable species in the ecosystem. Early humans were still learning to control fire, develop stone tools, and organize group hunting strategies. You were clever, yes, but far from dominant. Saber-toothed cats shared the landscape with giant herbivores like mammoths, giant ground sloths, and bison, prey worthy of their prowess. But humans, to them, you were an opportunistic meal, part of the daily risks of existence. Unlike some predators that would avoid humans, saber-toothed cats were indifferent. They didn't negotiate, didn't hesitate or test. If you crossed their path, you were either prey or a competitor, and the consequences were often fatal. Encounters with the beast. Picture this. You're out gathering roots or hunting smaller game near the edge of a forest. The sun is low, casting long shadows, and the air is cool and heavy. The scent of earth, plants, and distant prey fills your nose. Suddenly the underbrush rustles, a subtle, almost imperceptible sound. Your heart quickens. You don't see the cat at first. It's hidden in the thicket, muscles coiled, eyes locked on you with a predator's focus. Before you can react, the saber-toothed cat explodes into motion, closing the distance in terrifying seconds. Unlike modern predators that might chase prey for miles, the saber-toothed cat relies on surprise and power. It lunges, sinking those enormous fangs into your neck or throat, designed to sever arteries and crush windpipes. There's no chase, no escape once the cat strikes. Your chances in this fight are slim. Stone tools and fire might offer some defense, but in the open, this giant cat holds the advantage. It is a reminder that nature's balance was not in your favor. Why the saber-tooth? Evolution's razor edge. Those enormous fangs didn't evolve for intimidation alone. They were perfectly adapted for killing the giant mammals that roamed Ice Age landscapes. Imagine a bison or mammoth calf immobilized by a saber-tooth's powerful leap, its fangs slicing cleanly to cause swift death. But these teeth were fragile compared to the rest of the skull. Unlike the crushing teeth of modern lions, these were designed for precise killing bites, not prolonged chewing. This meant the saber-toothed cat had to be careful and accurate. A single failed attack could leave its mighty fangs damaged and useless. This specialization, though effective, also contributed to the cat's eventual extinction. As prey animals declined due to climate shifts and human expansion, the saber-toothed cat's hunting niche narrowed. Without enough giant prey to sustain them, their specialized adaptations became a disadvantage in a rapidly changing world. Human responses: avoidance, defense, and respect. Early humans quickly learned that saber-toothed cats were not opponents to be fought head-on. Instead, they developed strategies to avoid confrontation. They preferred to hunt smaller, more manageable prey or scavenge from kills after the big cats moved on. They moved in groups, used fire as a deterrent, and sought shelter in caves or natural fortresses that could keep the cats out. Stories and warnings about the saber-toothed cat surely circulated around firelit camps. The animal became woven into myth and cautionary tales, a symbol of raw, unrelenting danger in the wild. You might find yourself avoiding particular hunting grounds, traveling only during daylight, or always carrying sharp stone tools and clubs. Cooperation with your tribe became a necessity, not just for hunting, but for protection. The psychological weight of being prey. Living under the shadow of such predators shaped not only daily behavior, but also early human psychology. Constant vigilance was required. The quiet sound of a twig snapping or a distant roar could mean death. This fear likely fueled the development of early rituals, art, and spiritual beliefs, attempts to explain and influence the dangerous forces around you. Carvings of fearsome beasts, protective charms, or rituals to appease the spirits of predators were early responses to the terror of predation. The saber-toothed cat was more than just a hunter. It was a reminder of human vulnerability, a symbol of nature's indifferent cruelty. The legacy of the saber-toothed cat. Though Smilodon vanished around 10,000 years ago, the legacy of living alongside such a predator remains embedded in human nature. The primal fear of large carnivores, the respect for the power of nature, and the survival strategies shaped by such threats are echoed even today. Modern big cats, lions, tigers, leopards, inherit some of that ancient menace, reminding us that we are not always at the top of the food chain. And while we no longer fear saber-toothed cats, their fossilized jaws and haunting images continue to fascinate, telling a story of a time when humans had to be as much prey as predator. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, remember that once, the saber-toothed cat ruled the land with silent steps and deadly precision. It was not negotiable. It did not bargain. It was a gentle reminder from the past that no matter how far we've come, deep down we were, and sometimes still are, prey. How to fail at making art in a cave. Charcoal, spit, and stick figures that offend your tribe's aesthetic sensibilities. Art in the Stone Age wasn't just doodling on walls. It was a complex, ritualized, and deeply social act that carried meaning far beyond the marks themselves. Yet despite its importance, early attempts at cave art often went awry, producing stick figures, awkward charcoal smudges, and images that infuriated or embarrassed one's own tribe. In a world without art schools, YouTube tutorials, or even proper brushes, creating something visually compelling or symbolically potent was a monumental challenge. The materials were rudimentary: Charred sticks, crushed minerals, animal fats, and the ever-essential spit, which early humans used to bind pigments or smooth surfaces. It was a messy, physical process prone to errors, misfires, and accidents that could doom a piece to mockery or worse, social disapproval. To fail at making art in a cave was to risk not just your ego, but your status, your place in the tribe's spiritual or cultural hierarchy, and sometimes even your safety. The very act of drawing on cave walls was fraught with difficulty. The surfaces were uneven, rough, and damp in places, making it hard for charcoal or ochre to adhere properly. Early artists lacked proper lighting, often working by flickering firelight or dim torches that cast shadows and distorted their perceptions. Attempting to trace an animal or human figure could result in disproportionate limbs or comically misshapen forms that resembled little more than stick figures. Imagine the frustration when the magnificent mammoth you hoped to honor ended up looking like a smudged shadow with a lopsided tusk, or a head that seemed to float disconnected from the body. The tools themselves were primitive: sticks, bones, or fingers used to smear or scratch pigment onto stone. Brushes made from animal hair were likely too fragile or unavailable for everyday use. The spit used to fix pigment often left unwanted gloss or streaks, turning intended images into blotches or unintentionally abstract patterns. These technical shortcomings frequently led to art that was not only inelegant, but outright offensive to the tribe's aesthetic sensibilities. Why was this such a big deal? Cave art was far more than decoration. It was woven into the tribe's worldview, spiritual beliefs, and social cohesion. Art served to communicate with spirits, to invoke successful hunts, to preserve collective memory, and to mark territorial claims. A poorly executed drawing could be interpreted as a bad omen or a sign of disrespect to the animals depicted, risking angering both the spirits and fellow tribe members. Tribes were often small and close-knit, and maintaining harmony was essential. An artist who got it wrong might find their work defaced, erased, or their reputation diminished. Some might even face social sanctions, or in extreme cases, exile or punishment, for bringing bad energy through clumsy or disrespectful imagery. In this sense, failing at cave art wasn't a private embarrassment, but a communal problem that affected the entire group's spiritual well-being. The training for cave art was mostly oral and observational, learned through apprenticeship or imitation rather than formal teaching. The best artists were those who mastered the subtleties of line, proportion, and symbolism, gaining respect and status. But many others struggled to grasp these abstract concepts, producing crude or garish images. Some may have been earnest but clumsy beginners, others perhaps outsiders or youth still learning the rules. There's also evidence that some images might have been deliberately abstract or even humorous, playing with exaggerated forms or caricatures, although this is difficult to prove without textual records. What we do know is that cave art was rarely spontaneous or casual. It was ritualized, deliberate, and highly controlled. The use of charcoal and other pigments involved preparation and careful handling, and mistakes could not easily be erased or corrected once marked on the stone. One common failure was over-reliance on stick figures, a universal early drawing style that often failed to capture the complexity or power of the subjects. A stick figure hunter with a spear might look less threatening and more comical, undermining the intended message of prowess or protection. Similarly, animals reduced to simple outlines lost the dynamic energy or spiritual presence that detailed depictions could convey. These simplistic figures sometimes caused amusement or disdain among other tribe members who expected more sophisticated visual storytelling. Another pitfall was the misuse of charcoal, using too much, which resulted in heavy smudges and loss of detail, or too little, creating faint marks that quickly faded or went unnoticed. Blowing pigment through hollow bones or directly from the mouth, a technique to create stencil effects, was easy to botch, producing unintended splatters or uneven edges. The addition of spit as a binding agent could also lead to uneven drying, cracking, or peeling of pigment over time, reducing the artwork's longevity and impact. Moreover, artistic failure in a cave was amplified by the communal nature of the space. These paintings were not private, but public declarations displayed in sacred or common gathering spots. Every tribe member, from elders to children, would see and judge the artwork. The pressure to perform well was immense, especially during ceremonies or rites of passage where art served as a key component. A young apprentice artist, nervous and inexperienced, might flub lines or misplace elements, drawing side glances or whispered critiques. The elder artists, custodians of tradition, might reprimand or redirect them, ensuring the tribe's visual language remained intact. In this way, cave art was both an artistic and social discipline, with failure carrying real consequences. Despite these challenges, failures were part of the creative process and could sometimes lead to innovation or new styles. Experimentation with color, form, and technique, even when unsuccessful, pushed the boundaries of Stone Age artistry. Some failed. Images might have been attempts at new symbols or storytelling methods, contributing to the gradual evolution of prehistoric art. The messy charcoal smudges or awkward stick figures left behind on cave walls provide crucial clues for modern archaeologists about the learning curve, diversity, and social dynamics of ancient artists. They reveal a world where creativity was born from trial, error, and perseverance rather than instant perfection. In the end, failing at cave art was a humanizing aspect of prehistoric life. It reminds us that our ancestors were not perfect creators, but individuals struggling with limited resources, tough conditions, and social expectations, much like artists today. Their art was a profound act of communication, connection, and belief, even when the results were less than masterful. Next time you visit a cave adorned with ancient paintings or gaze at reproductions in a museum, remember the invisible stories of frustration, learning, and risk behind every line. Those stick figures, charcoal smears, and odd shapes weren't just mistakes. They were the courageous attempts of early humans to make sense of their world, express their hopes, and leave a mark on history, even if it meant sometimes offending the tribe's aesthetic sensibilities. Stone Age Travel Diaries, The Great Migration. Walking. So much walking. Why is there always more walking? The Stone Age was defined not only by its tools and fires, but by a relentless, often exhausting demand for movement. Walking. Endless, grueling walking. From sunrise to sunset, over rugged terrain and unpredictable weather, early humans trekked across continents without maps, GPS, or even clear reasons why they had to keep going. The Great Migration was less a single event and more a constant, drawn-out saga of feet-pounding dirt paths, riverbeds, and rocky slopes. Why so much walking? Why did it feel like no matter how far you went, there was always more ground to cover? Because survival demanded it. Food, shelter, safety. None of these came guaranteed in one place for long. The landscape itself was a vast and volatile challenge, forcing early humans to be nomads in the purest sense, following herds, seasonal plants, and weather patterns that shifted with terrifying unpredictability. Every step was a gamble, every path a mystery. There was no luxury of settling down for decades in one spot. The Stone Age world was in flux, and humans had to keep pace or perish. Walking was the backbone of daily life, an unending necessity that shaped bodies and minds alike. Our ancestors' legs grew strong, their feet toughened, their lungs expanded, all adaptations to this constant motion. Their muscles ached, their joints creaked, and blisters formed and burst, but they kept going. Theirs was a life of perpetual pilgrimage through forests, plains, mountains, and frozen tundras. Imagine the relentless monotony, punctuated only by brief rests or sudden dangers. The absence of roads meant every journey was unpredictable. A tangle of mud, fallen trees, and hidden dangers like snakes or predators. Crossing rivers was a perilous challenge, fording fast currents or navigating slippery stones. Night travel was rare but sometimes necessary, relying on moonlight or stars for guidance, adding fear of unseen threats lurking in shadows. Despite this, humans had no choice but to move. Their survival hinged on chasing migrating herds like mammoths, reindeer, or bison, which were the lifeblood of food, clothing, and tools. But it wasn't just about food. Seasonal changes forced early humans to follow plant cycles for gathering edible roots, berries, and nuts. Water sources dried or shifted, and shelter had to be found or built anew, often in caves, rock shelters, or temporary huts. The Ice Ages brought repeated cycles of freezing cold and warming spells, pushing groups south or north, up and down valleys, through passes that could be blocked by glaciers or landslides. This constant walking was a form of adaptation, a strategy to outlive environmental upheavals that no single location could withstand. Walking also had social implications. Groups had to stay together, navigate as a tribe, protect their young and old, share resources, and sometimes negotiate or compete with other bands over territory. Cooperation and communication became vital skills honed on the move, with routes memorized and stories told to mark significant landmarks or dangers ahead. This communal migration created bonds but also stresses, as decisions about when to move and where to go could spark conflict. Early humans carried all they owned on their backs or shoulders: tools, food caches, fire starting materials, clothing made from hides, the weight adding another layer of challenge to the journey. The burden of hauling these necessities while keeping up the pace made walking exhausting, but essential. Rest days happened, but were brief. As predators circled, food supplies dwindled, and weather threatened. Children and elders, often less able to endure long distances, were protected and supported by the tribe, sometimes carried in crude slings or makeshift carriers fashioned from hides and vines. Pregnant women, injured hunters, or sick members slowed the group, forcing decisions between care and survival. Every footstep was weighed against these harsh realities. The psychological toll was also immense. Weariness, fear, and frustration mixed with the hope and determination that life lay just beyond the next ridge. Despite the hardships, walking brought a profound connection to the land. Early humans were attuned to the subtle signs of nature: the call of birds, the rustle of leaves, the direction of the wind, all clues that helped them choose paths and avoid dangers. They learned to read the terrain like a storybook, interpreting rocks, plants, and animal tracks to navigate vast, unfamiliar regions. This intimate knowledge was passed down orally through generations, forming the basis of early navigation skills. Walking was not just movement, it was exploration, discovery, and survival knowledge encoded in every step. The rhythm of walking may have also shaped early humans and mental life, the repetitive motion creating space for reflection, bonding, and planning. Songs, stories, and myths probably accompanied many miles, easing the burden of travel with shared culture. Yet the Great Migration was not linear or predictable. Groups often doubled back, veered off course, or splintered due to disagreements or environmental obstacles. Some areas became temporary refuges, while others were forever abandoned. This constant flux made the journey perilous, with no guarantees and no end in sight. Why keep walking when exhaustion and hunger screamed to stop? Because standing still meant death. The earth was changing faster than human bodies could adjust, and movement was the only answer. Walking was a form of resistance against extinction, a testament to human endurance and willpower. Modern humans are sedentary by comparison, their feet cushioned and supported by shoes, their journeys mapped by screens. But it's worth remembering that walking shaped who we are: our bodies, our social bonds, our stories, even our sense of time. The Great Migration was the ultimate road trip, miles upon miles of footsteps carving a path for humanity's future. So next time you complain about a long walk or a tough hike, remember the ancestors whose lives depended on putting one foot in front of the other, day after relentless day, with no destination but survival itself. Surprisingly clever, strong, and not impressed by your flint collection. It's one thing to hear stories whispered by your tribe around the flickering firelight, tales of strange, stocky people who live somewhere beyond the great river or the craggy hills. But it's quite another to meet these Neanderthal neighbors face to face. When your tribe finally wanders into the rocky valley they call home, your breath catches. The Neanderthals stand before you like living remnants of the wild earth itself, broad-shouldered and heavy-boned, their faces marked by prominent brows and deep-set eyes that seem to pierce right through you. They exude a raw, primal power, as if every muscle, every sinew, was forged by the very stone and soil beneath their feet. Clutching your prized flint spearhead, carefully chipped and polished to a fine edge, you hope it might buy you some respect, or at least serve as protection. But your delicate craftsmanship seems fragile next to the sheer physicality of these neighbors. They regard your tools with what feels like mild amusement, or perhaps indifferent curiosity, as if your spear were more a trinket than a weapon. You soon realize that, to them, your carefully flaked flint looks like a knife made of glass, unsuitable for the harsh realities of survival. They do not speak your language. Their grunts and guttural sounds are foreign, punctuated by gestures and body language. Yet somehow communication begins, bridging the gap between your two worlds, however clumsy and minimal it may be. Watching them work is a lesson in raw practicality. One Neanderthal, a giant among giants, hefts a massive rock and smashes it with such force against a tree root that splinters fly in every direction. The shards are crude but effective, sharp enough to slice through sinew and skin, and far more brutal than your tribe's finely carved flint blades. Where your people prize finesse and artistry in tool-making, the Neanderthals favor sheer power and speed. Their tools and weapons are blunt and heavy, designed not for elegance but to kill quickly and build sturdily. And yet, despite their brutish appearance, you notice their cleverness. They line their sleeping areas with moss and soft plants, fashion hafted tools with wooden handles, and even carve simple bone implements. Their approach to survival is different, but no less intelligent. The reality of shared territory soon settles like a shadow over your tribe. The forests, meadows, and rivers here are not vast enough to separate you completely. Both your tribe and the Neanderthals hunt the same herds of deer and bison, gather the same berries and roots. Sometimes footprints, large, heavy, and unmistakable, appear alongside your own near the riverbanks. You learn quickly that direct confrontation is dangerous and mostly avoided. There is an unspoken agreement, a wary respect, and a distance maintained between your peoples. You avoid their campsites, they avoid yours. Hunting parties steer clear of one another's favored patches, and disputes are rare but tense. Yet this cautious coexistence is not without its cultural clashes. Your tribe takes pride in crafting beautiful flint arrowheads, delicate beads made from polished shells, and vivid paintings on cave walls that tell stories of hunts, heroes, and spirits. The Neanderthals seem indifferent, if not outright dismissive of such things. Their art, if it can be called that, consists of arrangements of stones around fires or scars worn as badges of survival and courage. Once, a child from your tribe shyly offers a shell necklace to a Neanderthal woman. She picks it up, turns it over thoughtfully, and then, without a word, tosses it aside and returns to tending her fire. It stings to witness such rejection, but you understand that meaning and beauty are different currencies in this raw, primal world. Despite these differences, moments of shared humanity shine through. You see a Neanderthal father cradle his child close, humming a low, soothing sound, a gesture so universal it melts any sense of otherness. Around their fires, you catch echoes of laughter, deep, rumbling, and genuine. You witness elders teaching youth how to fashion tools with patience and care. Evidence of burial shows a tenderness beneath their rough exterior. Bodies carefully arranged, covered with flowers and leaves, a silent farewell that mirrors your own rituals. These glimpses remind you that beneath the muscle and gruffness lies a shared heart, a common thread woven by survival, family, and memory. Sometimes your tribe stumbles upon tools or artifacts bearing the unmistakable marks of Neanderthal craftsmanship mixed with your own. It suggests a complex relationship, perhaps trade, cooperation, or even interbreeding, long before stories were told around fires. Elders whisper of ancestors who crossed paths more closely than anyone admits, that some of your cleverness was borrowed from these rugged neighbors. Though the mysteries of your interactions remain largely unsolved, you sense a dance of friendship, rivalry, and learning that shaped both peoples. It is not simply survival of the fittest, but survival through adaptation and connection. The Neanderthals teach you lessons in resilience. Their brute strength and endurance remind you that survival isn't guaranteed by beauty or skill alone. They endure winters that seem eternal, wielding their power to claim space and resources fiercely. Their knowledge of the land is intimate, owned through generations. They use every part of the animal they kill, waste nothing. This practical wisdom challenges your tribe's assumptions about what it means to live well in this harsh, unforgiving world. You learn to balance your art and ingenuity with a deeper respect for raw power and simplicity. By the end of your time among these neighbors, you find your own tribe changed, harder, wiser, and humbled. You may still prize your flint tools and colorful stories, but you carry with you the awareness that strength comes in many forms. The Neanderthals are neither monsters nor myths, but fellow travelers on the ancient path of human survival. They are a reminder that beneath the surface, all early humans share the same fight against cold, hunger, and danger, bound together by the fragile thread of life. As you leave the valley, the Neanderthals watch silently, their eyes steady and unyielding. There is no grand farewell, no exchange of gifts or promises, only the quiet acknowledgement of mutual endurance. You carry their legacy with you, etched not in stone carvings or painted walls, but in your very bones and blood. The Neanderthals, your neighbors and your equals, walk beside you still, echoing through the endless wilderness of time. The first fireside stories, grunting your way through myths, mammoth tales, and gossip. Night settles over the camp like a thick blanket, muffling the sounds of the day and cloaking the world in darkness. The fire crackles and spits, its orange tongues dancing wildly against the pitch-black backdrop. Around it, the tribe gathers close, faces illuminated in flickering light, shadows twisting and merging into one another. It's time for stories, the oldest human tradition, the original entertainment, and the glue that holds the tribe together. The first fireside stories are far from polished. No books, no written scripts, just grunts, gestures, and the magic of imagination brought alive in the warmth of the flames. As the hunter who brought back the mammoth meat settles next to the fire, he grunts loudly to get attention, hands raised and waving to mimic the great beast's massive horns and lumbering bulk. His voice is rough, a series of guttural sounds mixed with sudden, sharp shouts. Around him, the tribe responds with chuckles and imitative noises, each person trying to outdo the last in the art of dramatic storytelling, even if it means butchering the tale with absurd gestures or wildly exaggerated grunts. The language is simple, grunts, growls, and points, but the meaning is clear. The mammoth was enormous, fierce, and victorious prey worthy of respect. There's no script or storyteller's manual here, just the raw human urge to share experience. It starts with basic facts. The mammoth was big, the hunt was dangerous, and the meat will feed the tribe. But soon the story grows, fueled by imagination and a desire to entertain. The hunter acts out the chase, pretending to stumble and fall, narrowly escaping the mammoth's angry tusks. Someone else grunts out a high-pitched cry to represent the mammoth's roar, while a child jumps up, pretending to be the charging beast, eliciting laughter and cries of mock terror. Around the fire, the tribe is alive with excitement, caught up in a tale that blurs the line between fact and fantasy. The stories told here are more than just entertainment. They are a way to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. Lessons on where to find game, warnings about dangerous places, and advice on how to survive. But they also serve a social purpose, creating bonds between tribe members, reinforcing shared identity, and giving a voice to individual experience. The storyteller, even if clumsy or awkward, holds a kind of power, commanding attention and respect. In this way, stories become a form of currency. The better the tale, the higher the storyteller's status. Between the big mammoth stories come smaller, lighter tales. Gossip, essentially, passed from mouth to mouth in the most primitive form. A grunt here, a pointed finger there, an exaggerated eyebrow raise. Someone's mate was spotted talking to a rival hunter. A child has learned a new trick. A curious stranger was seen near the river. These simple narratives carry weight, shaping alliances and rivalries, prompting laughter, suspicion, or gossip-fueled caution. Even in this primal setting, social dynamics are complex, and storytelling is a vital tool for navigating them. The oldest members of the tribe sometimes try to infuse the stories with mythic meaning, creating explanations for the world that go beyond immediate experience. Around the fire, the flickering light becomes the glow of the sun god, and the crackling fire represents the spirit of the great mammoth that gives life and death. They grunt slowly and reverently, using deep, rhythmic sounds that mimic the thunder of distant skies or the rumble of an ancient earth. Younger tribe members watch in wide-eyed wonder, hanging on every sound and gesture. These tales explain the mysteries of the natural world, why the sun rises and sets, why the rivers flow, why the stars sparkle. They provide comfort against the unknown and give the tribe a shared cosmology. Humor is never far from the fireside, though. The tribe delights in rival jokes, silly imitations, and exaggerated claims. Someone acts out a hapless hunter slipping in mud, slipping again, and finally falling flat on his face, drawing raucous laughter. Another mimics the grumbling noises of a disgruntled elder complaining about a lost spear or a child who refuses to hunt. These moments of levity strengthen communal ties, allowing the tribe to laugh at their flaws and frustrations. In this way, storytelling becomes a way to cope with the hardships of life in the wild. The fire itself is a character in these stories, a source of warmth, danger, and magic. The flames flicker unpredictably, their shapes transforming from roaring beasts to gentle waves and back again. The smoke curls upward, carrying whispers of ancient voices and forgotten tales. Tribe members watch the fire with reverence and caution, knowing how quickly it can turn from protector to destroyer. Stories about fire's power circulate among the group, a cautionary tale of a careless spark setting the forest ablaze, or a triumphant narrative of fire taming the night and driving away darkness. Occasionally, the stories become more personal, turning inward to reflect the lives of the tribe members themselves. A mother grunts softly as she gestures toward her sleeping infant, telling the tale of the child's first steps or first words, much to the delight of nearby listeners. A young hunter shares, through a series of excited noises and broad gestures, his first successful solo kill. These personal stories are treasured, providing connection and pride, weaving individual lives into the larger tribal narrative. As the fire dies down to glowing embers, the mood shifts from exuberant storytelling to quiet reflection. The tribe settles in closer, eyes heavy, but minds still alive with the images and emotions the stories have stirred. Some begin to hum low, rhythmic sounds, primitive songs that echo the cadence of the tales told. Others simply stare into the embers, lost in thought or preparing for the coming night and the dreams it will bring. The stories become a kind of bridge between the waking world and the realm of sleep, between the known and the unknown. Before sleep claims the tribe, the last story told is often a hopeful one, a myth of the coming dawn, a promise of safety and abundance, or a vision of the next great hunt. The fire's glow fades slowly, and with it the voices grow softer until only the crackle of the dying wood remains. One by one, eyes close, breaths deepen, and the tribe drifts into a collective slumber, their dreams woven from the threads of the night's stories. In this ancient ritual, the tribe finds much more than mere distraction from the hardships of their existence. They find identity, wisdom, humor, and hope. They find connection to each other, to their ancestors, to the world around them, and to the unseen forces that shape their lives. The first fireside stories are the foundation of human culture itself, the sparks that would one day ignite entire civilizations. And so, as you sit there in the flickering firelight, grunting your way through myths, mammoth tales, and gossip, you are participating in a timeless tradition. You are a storyteller, a keeper of knowledge, and a bearer of culture. The night stretches on, dark and full of mystery, but you are not afraid, for the fire is alive, and so are the stories it carries. When everything tries to kill you, rain, rocks, berries, bears, nature is not subtle about its intentions. Imagine waking up every day in a world where danger lurks in every shadow, where the landscape itself seems to conspire against you, and where survival is a relentless, unforgiving battle. This was the reality for early humans living in the Paleolithic era, a time when nature was a brutal teacher, making it abundantly clear that existence was a delicate, precarious gift. When everything tries to kill you, be it rain, rocks, berries, or bears, there is no room for complacency, no time for error, and no luxury of forgetting that the wild world around you is not a gentle caretaker, but an indifferent force of chaos and threat. The sky falls, rain and the elements. The sky could be your friend or your enemy. Rain, in particular, was a double-edged sword. While it nourished plants and refilled streams, sustaining life, it also threatened the very shelters early humans had painstakingly carved out. A Paleolithic cave might offer refuge, but it was drafty, damp, and cold. Outside, rain transformed the earth into slippery mud, making travel treacherous and slow. Clothes fashioned from animal hides would soak through, losing their warmth and leaving bodies vulnerable to hypothermia. There was no Gore-Tex or down insulation. Every soaking meant a shivering, aching body and a heightened risk of sickness. When rain poured relentlessly, rivers swelled, washing away paths and making familiar landmarks vanish beneath roiling currents. Hunting became nearly impossible when prey animals retreated or hid, and fires, the lifeline against cold and predators, were difficult to maintain. Smoke would chase away rain only briefly before sparks fizzled out, leaving the tribe to huddle in wet, shivering misery. The frustration was immense. Hunger gnawed, morale plummeted, and the landscape, soaked and unyielding, seemed to close in. But rain was not the only unforgiving element. Winds howled through exposed plains and mountain passes, ripping at skin and bone. Sun blasted down in relentless heat, threatening dehydration and sunstroke. Snow and ice choked the land during Ice Age winters, burying food sources and adding layers of peril. Weather was not just a background condition. It was an active, unpredictable opponent, constantly testing the limits of human endurance. Rocks and earth, the unmoving threats. If the skies did not kill you, the very ground beneath your feet could. Rocks, cliffs, and unstable earth posed a daily hazard. Imagine climbing a steep slope to gather edible plants or hunt for game, only for a loose stone to slip beneath your foot and send you tumbling down with broken bones or worse. Natural rockfalls could wipe out entire campsites, crushing shelters and the people inside. Sharp stones, while essential for making tools and weapons, were equally capable of slicing flesh in a careless moment. Caves, often sought for shelter, were not always safe havens. Sudden floods could trap early humans inside, with no escape but through rising waters. Toxic gases might seep from underground pockets, suffocating without warning. Even the stable ground sometimes betrayed its inhabitants through hidden pits or quicksand. The terrain demanded constant vigilance. Every step was a gamble. Every surface could conceal danger. Berries and plants, beauty with a deadly bite. Even the plants, seemingly benign and beautiful, held peril. Edible fruits and roots were critical for survival, supplementing a diet heavy in protein from hunted animals. Yet nature's grocery store was full of poisonous lookalikes. A berry that appeared sweet and inviting might cause severe illness, paralysis, or death if eaten. Without modern botanical knowledge, early humans had to learn through bitter trial and error which plants were safe and which were fatal. Some berries contained toxins that built up slowly, causing gradual sickness that mimicked other ailments, making diagnosis nearly impossible. Poisonous plants lurked in the undergrowth, their thorns or irritants causing painful wounds or allergic reactions. Gathering food required not just bravery, but a sophisticated understanding of the environment, passed down through generations with stories and warnings. Medicinal plants were equally vital, but difficult to identify. A misstep in herbal knowledge could mean mistaking poison for cure. Early humans experimented cautiously, using taste, smell, and observation of animal behavior as guides. If a certain berry made birds sick or avoided by other creatures, it was a likely candidate for danger. But even animals were not foolproof guides. Some poisonous plants were eaten by insects or mammals that had special adaptations, which humans lacked. Predators, the ultimate killers. Above all these environmental threats stood the predators. Wolves, saber-toothed cats, bears, and others, each a constant menace. Predators were not merely a source of fear, but a very real and present danger. Unlike rain or rocks, animals could actively hunt you down. Their senses, keen sight, smell, and hearing, far outmatched human abilities. Without weapons, humans were defenseless. Hunting was a deadly gamble. Prey animals were often just as dangerous. Charging mammoths or stampeding bison could crush or trample hunters. Ambush predators lurked in dense forests or tall grasses, ready to strike. Bears were particularly fearsome. Massive, powerful, and territorial, they could obliterate a small group in moments. Human groups relied heavily on cooperation, strategic use of weapons like spears and traps, and the protective power of fire to keep predators at bay. Encounters with predators could be fatal or serve as terrifying lessons. Sometimes the best defense was to flee or freeze, but this was rarely enough. Groups had to build warning systems, keep constant watch, and develop early alarm calls. Night was especially dangerous when vision dimmed and stealthy creatures prowled. Sleep was often light and fragmented, with one or more tribe members on guard duty. Insects and microbes, the invisible assassins. Less obvious but no less lethal were the insects and microbes. Biting insects brought irritation and disease, sometimes deadly. Mosquitoes, ticks, and flies transmitted infections without mercy. Small wounds became portals for infection. Without antiseptics or antibiotics, even minor injuries could lead to fatal sepsis. Water sources, vital for life, were often breeding grounds for disease. Drinking from stagnant pools or rivers contaminated with parasites led to gastrointestinal illnesses that could incapacitate or kill. Early humans likely developed some immunity over time, but disease outbreaks were frequent and devastating. The mental toll, living with constant threat. The omnipresence of danger shaped the psychology of early humans. Living under perpetual threat meant chronic stress, heightened alertness, and quick responses. This constant vigilance could exhaust individuals mentally and physically. Fear was not an occasional visitor, but a continuous companion. Yet this shared struggle also forged strong social bonds. Trust and cooperation were vital to collective survival. Groups that worked together, sharing food, guarding camps, warning of danger, had higher chances of living through the relentless challenges. Social cohesion was a survival tool just as much as sharp spears or sturdy shelters. Adaptation and innovation, surviving the onslaught. Despite the many ways nature threatened life, early humans were resilient and ingenious. They adapted clothing from animal hides to shield against cold and wet, fashioned tools and weapons from flint and bone to hunt and defend, and created shelters that protected from wind and rain. Fire was a game changer, providing warmth, cooked food, and predator deterrence. Learning from experience and observation was key. Knowledge about which berries were safe, how to track animals, and when to migrate to avoid harsh weather was passed through oral tradition. Early humans developed seasonal rhythms, moving with the availability of food and shelter. Cooperation in groups enabled the pooling of knowledge and resources. Even the dangers themselves shaped human evolution. Those who could better perceive threats, react swiftly, and communicate danger had survival advantages. Physical traits like sturdy limbs, endurance, and acute senses were favored. Social intelligence, reading others' intentions, coordinating group activities, became essential, a life forged in danger. In sum, the Paleolithic world was a crucible of peril. Rain drenched and chilled, rocks toppled and cut, berries tempted but poisoned, and predators stalked silently in the shadows. Survival demanded constant alertness, courage, and the ability to adapt rapidly. Every day was a negotiation with death, a test of resilience. Yet through these struggles, humans grew not just physically stronger, but wiser and more connected. The very forces that tried to kill them forged the skills, social bonds, and innovations that made human civilization possible. When everything tries to kill you, you learn to cherish life fiercely, to cooperate deeply, and to respect the wild world in all its brutal honesty. So next time you complain about a rainy day, a mosquito bite, or a bad berry in your fruit bowl, remember, our ancestors faced these dangers daily, without medicine, shelter, or backup. They survived because they adapted, learned, and fought fiercely against a world that was anything but subtle in its intentions. A fashion guide to itchy hides, poor tailoring, and mammoth skin capes. Clothing in the Stone Age was a far cry from the fashion runways and online shopping carts we know today. If you think your old sweater is uncomfortable, imagine wrapping yourself in mammoth skin, raw and stiff, with tufts of fur that poke and itch like a nest of angry wasps. Early humans did not wear clothes for style or personal expression. They wore whatever they could scrape together to survive the relentless chill of the Ice Age. This was fashion born out of necessity, and the results were as crude as the tools used to make them. Your outfit might be a patchwork of animal hides crudely stitched with bone needles and sinew threads that snapped more often than not. The concept of tailoring was rudimentary at best. Cutting a hide to fit your body involved guesswork, trial, and error, and many a garment probably resembled a lumpy sack more than wearable attire. Seams were uneven, holes were left unclosed, and the fasteners were likely just strips of hide tied in knots, hoping they held long enough to keep you warm. Comfort was a luxury Stone Age humans could not afford, and the itchy, scratchy, well stiff feeling of rawhide was a constant companion. Mammoth skin capes were prized possessions, not for their elegance, but for their incredible warmth. Though carrying around a heavy, awkward cape made of giant beast skin was no small task, especially when you had to trek miles in search of food or shelter. Layering was key. Multiple pieces of hide, fur, and whatever softer skins could be scavenged were stacked to trap heat close to the body. But this added bulk and limited mobility. Imagine trying to climb, run, or hide while wrapped like a prehistoric burrito. Yet, despite the obvious flaws, these garments saved lives. Without them, frostbite and hypothermia would have claimed even more victims. The tools for making clothes were primitive but improving. Flint blades chipped sharper to cut hides, bone needles fashioned thin enough to pierce tough skins, and cords made from plant fibers or animal sinew twisted into threads. But mastering these techniques took time, skill, and patience. Luxuries scarce in a world where every day was a struggle to stay alive. For many, clothes were more of a social marker than a fashion statement. Different hides or decoration, like beads made from shells or bones, might signify status or achievements within a tribe. Yet ornamentation was minimal because every extra item added weight and risked damage in the harsh environment. There were no soft cottons, no woven fabrics, no colors beyond the natural browns, grays, and tans of the animal pelts that surrounded them. Washing clothes was not a concept either. Once you wrapped yourself in animal hide, it was likely to remain with you until it wore out or fell apart, accumulating dirt, sweat, and the occasional bloodstain from hunting mishaps. The smell of musk and earth mingled with that of wet fur after rain or snow. Hygiene took a backseat to survival, so itching, skin irritations, and even infections were common problems. In a way, early humans wore their hardships on their skins, literally and figuratively. There was also the challenge of sourcing materials. Not every animal was killed for food alone. Some were prized primarily for their hides. Mammoths, bison, deer, and reindeer provided skins of varying thickness and warmth. But hunting these beasts was perilous and not guaranteed. Scavenging from predator kills or collecting shed pelts during molting seasons supplemented the wardrobe, but quality hides were precious and sometimes fiercely contested. Tribes with better access to large game or superior tanning techniques held a subtle edge in the brutal fight for survival. Tanning, the process of turning rawhide into wearable leather, was a skill in its infancy. Early humans discovered that soaking hides in water, rubbing them with animal brains or fats, and smoking them over fire helped make them softer and more durable. But without modern chemicals, these processes were inconsistent, and the results varied widely. Often hides remained stiff or became brittle over time, forcing frequent repairs or replacements. Every patch and stitch told a story of adaptation and resilience. Beyond protection from the cold, clothing also served as armor against the environment's many threats: thorny plants, biting insects, and abrasive rocks. Yet the very materials that shielded from harm could also cause it. Sharp bone needles sometimes pierced fingers, sinew threads snapped unexpectedly, and the weight of wet fur could drag a hunter down in the muddy swamps. Living in this constant tension between protection and discomfort was the norm, shaping a lifestyle of endurance and resourcefulness. Children's clothing was another challenge. Tiny bodies needed warmth, but were constantly growing and moving. Rather than crafting elaborate miniature garments, many children likely stayed wrapped in swaddling hides or carried in simple slings made from soft skins or woven fibers. Babies clung to their mothers, sharing body heat as much as clothing. The elders, meanwhile, wore what they could still manage to patch together, often marked by years of wear and the accumulation of scars from both clothing and life's trials. Clothing also had a spiritual or ritual aspect in some communities. Wearing certain furs or decorating hides with symbols might have been linked to rites of passage, hunting success, or protection from evil spirits. These cultural elements added meaning beyond the purely practical and hinted at the earliest forms of human identity and expression through dress. Despite the many downsides, itchiness, poor fit, limited mobility, early humans understood that clothing was essential. Without it, survival through freezing winters or damp nights would have been impossible. The slow evolution of sewing, tanning, and tailoring techniques reflected humanity's relentless innovation in the face of adversity. It's a wonder anyone could stand the daily discomfort long enough to invent better methods, but invent they did, laying the foundation for the complex clothing and textile industries that would come thousands of years later. So next time you complain about an itchy tag or a tight collar, Remember the mammoth skin cape, the bone needle punctures, and the stiff hide that once was the height of fashion for survival. Early humans may not have been the world's best dressed, but they were certainly some of its toughest, turning the brutal wilderness into a runway of resilience, one painfully stitched garment at a time. A final reflection on leaving Africa, walking into the unknown, and beginning the story of us. The story of humanity at its core is a story of movement, a restless, courageous departure from the cradle of Africa into the vast, unknown wilderness beyond. It is a story etched into our bones, whispered through the ages by winds that carried early humans across continents, over mountains, deserts, and seas, into lands that no human had ever set foot on before. To leave Africa was to leave the familiar warmth of a homeland, where countless generations had hunted, gathered, loved, and mourned beneath the sun that kissed the savannas and forests. It was to step into a world both thrilling and terrifying, where every step could mean discovery or death, where the landscape itself was an uncharted puzzle of stone, ice, and fire. This epic migration, which began over 60,000 years ago, was not just a physical journey, but a profound transformation of what it meant to be human, a migration that would shape our species' identity, culture, and destiny. Imagine the scene: a small band of early Homo sapiens, their skin glistening with sweat, muscles taut from the strain of travel, eyes sharp and alert for danger, clutching rudimentary tools fashioned from flint and bone, clutching the fragile hopes of survival. Behind them lay Africa, their cradle, their origin story, the place where the spark of consciousness had first flickered in a brain not so different from ours. Ahead stretched the unknown, vast and often hostile landscapes where mammoths roamed, saber-tooths prowled, and the sky above held unfamiliar constellations. This exodus was a leap into uncertainty, propelled by the relentless drive to find food, shelter, and perhaps a better future. The reasons for leaving remain a matter of scientific debate. Climate shifts that dried up familiar territories, population pressures, the pull of new resources, or the simple human urge to explore and expand horizons. Whatever the motive, this migration was a defining chapter in the human saga. As they moved north and east, these early travelers adapted with astonishing ingenuity. They fashioned clothing from animal hides to shield themselves from unfamiliar cold, created fire not just to cook, but to offer warmth and protection against predators, and developed languages and social bonds strong enough to carry them through hardship. They were no longer merely survivors. They were pioneers and innovators. The landscapes they encountered were wildly different from the African savanna. Icy tundras blanketed in snow, dense forests where light barely touched the ground, expansive grasslands teeming with strange beasts. Each environment demanded new skills and strategies, testing the limits of their resilience and creativity. The migration was as much about mental evolution as physical. It demanded planning, cooperation, and the passing of knowledge from one generation to the next. Crossing into the Middle East, Europe, and eventually Asia, these early humans met other hominins, Neanderthals, Denisovans, who had lived in these regions for hundreds of thousands of years. Interactions were complex, sometimes hostile, sometimes cooperative, and even intimate, as genetic evidence now shows. These encounters enriched the human gene pool and culture, weaving new threads into the fabric of our ancestry. The story of leaving Africa is thus not one of isolation, but of connection, exchange, and hybrid vigor. Our ancestors were not lone wanderers, but participants in a dynamic network of evolving populations, each adapting to their corner of the globe in unique ways. The migration was slow and uneven, spanning millennia and countless generations. Each group left subtle traces, stone tools, cave paintings, burial sites, that formed the archaeological breadcrumbs guiding modern scientists in piecing together this grand journey. These artifacts tell of not only survival, but also the emergence of art, ritual, and complex societies far from the African cradle. The journey outward was also a journey inward, into the realms of culture, belief, and identity. It was here, far from home, that humans began to tell stories, create symbols, and build the foundations of civilizations yet to come. Leaving Africa was in many ways the birth of the world as we know it, a world inhabited not by static tribes, but by a species defined by its restlessness, curiosity, and adaptability. This migration planted the seeds of diversity that bloom today in the myriad languages, customs, and peoples across continents. It is a story of resilience in the face of unknown dangers, of encounters with glaciers that advanced and retreated like great icy beasts, of droughts that turned fertile plains into deserts, and of predators that challenged the fragile thread of life. Yet, despite these obstacles, humanity endured and thrived, transforming the very landscapes it crossed. This exodus is also a story of leaving behind. To walk away from the only home ever known required an emotional fortitude that resonates across time. The bonds to place, ancestral lands, sacred sites, hunting grounds, were severed, replaced by the unknown and the promise of survival. It is a poignant reminder that migration is not merely a physical act, but an emotional and cultural rupture, one that countless peoples have experienced throughout history. The early human migration was the first chapter in this long tradition of movement, displacement, and adaptation. In reflecting on this journey, it becomes clear that the story of humanity is inseparable from the story of migration. Our genes, our languages, and our myths all carry echoes of this great departure. We are descendants of those who dared to step beyond the safety of the familiar, who faced the dark unknown with only rudimentary tools and unyielding hope. Their courage and curiosity are woven into the very essence of who we are. The map of human history is a map of footprints, those first hesitant steps out of Africa that blossomed into a global diaspora. Today, as we live in a world defined by borders and technology, it is humbling to remember that all of us, no matter our background, are children of this ancient journey. Our shared ancestry reminds us of the deep connections that bind humanity, transcending race, culture, and geography. The urge to explore, to migrate, to seek new horizons remains a defining human trait. It is both a legacy and a gift, one that propelled our ancestors out of Africa and continues to shape our collective future. The story of leaving Africa also invites reflection on the fragility and resilience of life. Our ancestors faced extreme challenges, climate changes, predators, scarcity, and yet their legacy is one of survival and adaptation. They remind us that to be human is to face uncertainty with determination, to create meaning in the midst of chaos, and to build communities that nurture and protect. The migration was a crucible that forged not only the species Homo sapiens, but also the qualities that make us unique: empathy, cooperation, and the drive to transcend limits. As the first humans stepped beyond their cradle, they carried with them more than their bodies. They carried dreams, fears, and the seeds of culture. Every step into the unknown was a step into the story of us, a story still unfolding with each new discovery, each new generation. From the African savannas to the frozen tundras of the far north, from island archipelagos to towering mountains, humans have shaped and been shaped by the world around them. This journey out of Africa was not the end but the beginning, the opening chapter in the epic saga of human history. In this light, the Great Migration is both a monument to human endurance and a call to remember our shared origins. It reminds us that the story of humanity is a journey without end, a continuous unfolding of exploration, adaptation, and connection. As we gaze at the stars, walk new paths, or face global challenges, we carry the spirit of those early travelers who dared to leave the cradle and step into the vastness of the world. Their footsteps echo in ours, urging us forward into the unknown, where new stories await.